Pokémon, medicine and martial arts. Welcome back, brave explorers of impossible worlds. We are excited to have you here to continue this odyssey together. Before we continue, everything you'll hear is pure fiction, so please don't try to replicate combat techniques at home. This wonderful story and all its rights belong to its brilliant original author. We are only the messengers of entertainment. Want another dose of adventure? Subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss a single chapter, and if you can't wait, our Patreon has exclusive surprises you'll love. Chapter 401, Acting Cute. Lizha, you shameless fellow. You know you're a veteran. Given the Master's personality, he'll definitely train us newbies. Then, you, the big brother, will just watch from the sidelines. Pika Pika, what the hell are you talking about? The Master wouldn't act like you say. Not bad, not bad. It looks like we've found the right direction. Now we just need to wait for the right moment to understand the enemy's situation, and then we can strike without hesitation, Yu muttered softly as he mentally sorted out the information he'd overheard, beginning to formulate a strategic plan. If my thinking is correct, then we should just sit back and wait. Yu rested his chin on his hand. His gaze, still looking forward, revealed his current state of mind, which was quite vacant. When he came to his senses, his attention was drawn back to the two quarreling men beside him. Exhaling deeply, Yu shook his cluttered head, clearing his mind of unnecessary thoughts. Only then could he focus on the two Pokémon beside him, who were giving him so much trouble. Perhaps too absorbed in their bickering, both Pichu and Charmeleon were watching them with a scowl. The throbbing veins on his forehead showed that Yu was straining his patience. He wanted to see what kind of trouble these two, usually close friends, could come up with. Pikachu and Charmeleon, still unaware of their masters, had long since recovered and were observing their casual bickering with interest. Pikachu, Lizha, the two Pokémon continued their heated argument, each unwilling to yield, their minds growing increasingly intent on a fight. In the darkness, faint arcs of electricity flickered around Pikachu. Charmeleon's eyes grew ever sharper, as if even darkness couldn't obstruct its vision. Pika Pika, Charmeleon, are you trying to rebel? It's been a while since we've fought, and you're itching for a fight. Lizha, come on, who's afraid of who? Honestly, it's been a while since we last sparred, and I really miss it. Look, have you gotten any weaker during this time we've been training separately? Damn it, am I being a somewhat incompetent master? What's going on? They're usually good friends, so why are they so angry about this? Yu's face was filled with rage, watching Charmeleon's claws gradually losing their brilliance and Pikachu's increasingly pronounced arcs of electricity. He felt a wave of anger, a feeling that the son's failure to teach is the fault of the father. Feeling the growing tension in the air, Yu felt a wave of pain. However, Yu didn't know this because the regular training staff had been adjusted. Pikachu and Charmeleon hadn't sparred in a while, and both were itching to fight. But for various reasons, none of them spoke. This train was just an excuse, a pretext to convince each other and engage in a sparring match. Of course, as the master, Yu, seeing this scene threatening to break out at any moment, had to intervene to prevent any negative atmosphere from spreading and affecting his team. So, Charmeleon and Pikachu were in for another bad time. Before they could even unleash their skills, each of them had a massive bump on their head. Faced with this sudden attack, Charmeleon's tough skin was relatively safe, but Pikachu's adorable big eyes were practically tearful. Fighting back tears, Pikachu looked at his master with a look of grievance, his eyes filled with pity. It was as if he was asking Yu, what have I done wrong? Why are you treating me like this? And master, your fist hurts, and it's going to make me stupid. Oh, I'm going to control my temper. Pikachu, when did you start imitating Gyarados' cutesy ways? How should I put it? Wow, what a cute Pikachu. I really want to hold him in my arms and pamper him, Yu said sarcastically. But for some reason, our little adorable pet, Pikachu, didn't even register the hidden meaning behind the words of his longtime master. Upon hearing his master's praise, Pikachu's face lit up with a bright smile, and he acted cute once again. It was as if to say, thank you so much for the compliment, I know Pikachu is incredibly adorable. Ever since he learned Gyarados' cuteness, every woman, from a 70-year-old woman to a 3-year-old girl, has succumbed to his cuteness. How he see how effective his cuteness is. And look at that uncool guy next to him, he's probably just waiting to be scolded by his master. I told you. It was because the silly big guy Gyarados' cuteness was too scary, otherwise how could such a good skill of cuteness have a counter effect on the owner? This Pikachu is indeed the cutest creature in the world, even the owner can turn them into cuteness. What's more, I am already a person who can turn thousands of girls into cuteness. Pikachu thought in his heart with some pride, and the originally cute expression became a little funny. But before Pikachu could come back to his senses from his beautiful fantasy, he felt that his little hut was subjected to violence again. Pika, the aggrieved cry rang out again, and Pikachu's eyes were really tearful at this moment. His big eyes were full of tears, and he looked like he might cry in front of you at any time. Haha. What's the point of being cute? Maybe your cuteness works on other people, but it won't work on me this week. You better reflect on yourself. Look at how well Charmeleon is doing. He's a role model. Learn from him. Do you hear me? Yu scolded him angrily, sighing helplessly in his heart. What's going on? The Pokemon under his command are all talented. Shouldn't he find a time to send them all back to Professor Anu so he can study them carefully? Who knows, maybe he can get something good from him then. Pikachu, my master looks so scary. This Pokemon feels wronged. Chapter 402 Feelings. Alright, put this away quickly. If you don't, I'll punish you severely. Yu had no eyes or mood to appreciate cute things, and waved his hand impatiently. If this scene was seen by Serena and the other two girls, they would probably blame Yu again. But now that the three girls can't see this situation, he can do whatever he wants. Wahaha, he is really smart. Why don't you train well and learn to be cute? This is the punishment, this is retribution. If this kind of biased behavior appears again in the future, will I punish him severely? Yu was secretly planning in his heart, and his eyes looking at the two Pokemon he applied for seemed a little malicious. Of course, Yu would not say it out loud and alert the enemy. He said this with a righteous look on his face. Alright, from now on, you all must obey me completely. If I tell you to go east, you must not go west. If I tell you to catch chickens, you must not eat them. Do you understand? Pikachu. Knowing this was serious, Pikachu's expression, though still slightly aggrieved, immediately changed to a serious one. Lee. The area fell silent once again, as if no one had passed through. A gust of evening wind rustled through the trees, leaving only the rustling of leaves. Lee, are they coming? But the atmosphere didn't last long before a voice, faintly excited and nervous, echoed. It was followed by another voice, and if you listened closely, you could hear a hint of impatience and nervousness. Pika, haha, I told you, newbies like you are such a loser. Even if you use your brain, you know the other team can't be that fast. And right now, you should just stay quiet and don't make any noise. Look at you, what are you doing right now? Lee, haha, I didn't realize you, a veteran, aren't much better. Aren't you supposed to be forbidden from talking? What are you talking about, Pika, I'm still being led into this by you. And I'm explaining to you, after all, a veteran leading a newbie is. Ouch, who is it, who hit me? Bang, suddenly, a muffled sound echoed from the dark forest. Any expert here would have recognized it, the sound of fists hitting flesh. I say, could you two be a little quiet? You haven't played since a while ago, have you? Yu's annoyed voice echoed from somewhere in the darkness. With the fall of the scolding, the entire dark forest returned to complete peace. Of course, just as Yu's side was completely quiet, the situation elsewhere was in stark contrast. This unknown forest was incredibly vast. Besides the bright lights where Serena and the other three women were camping, another area of the forest was also ablaze with light. Through the bright glow, a large group of individuals, each wearing black clothing with an S mark, could be clearly seen, gathering in groups of 2 or 3. Each of them was accompanied by at least one Pokemon, searching everywhere they passed, a blanket search to the extreme. This suggested that the black-clad individuals had lost their way while trying to capture the unknown Pokemon. Damn it! Where did that guy go? Hurry up and find him. We must find him. The wolfhounds used scent detection to locate him. This seemingly chaotic situation was actually remarkably orderly. Under the leadership of their leader, everything seemed perfectly organized. This also indirectly demonstrates how organized even the lowest-ranking members of the S organization can be. As for their torches, during the pursuit, due to the darkness, they nearly lost them several times. This led them to have their fire-type Pokémon use the flames of the torches to create a path. However, even with the torches to illuminate the path, they still lost their Pokémon. "Captain, we haven't found that guy." "Captain, the same is true on our side." Report. The leading team leader's eyelids twitched as he heard the negative reports from the members sent out to search the surrounding areas. Rubbing his swollen head, the team leader impatiently sent his men out again, telling them to continue the search. How could they have lost him? If they didn't find him, losing their jobs would be a minor matter, but they would face punishment from the organization. The more he thought about it, the more troubled he became. The team leader subconsciously turned his gaze to the Pokémon following him. Blue, as if influenced by his master's personality. Upon noticing his master's gaze, Blue King didn't show the usual joyful cheers of a Pokémon. Instead, he simply chirped softly, his eyes filled with questioning questions. After all, while Blue King was his Pokémon this time, it wasn't really his. This Blue King was a reward given to him by the higher-ups when he was first appointed team leader. Therefore, the team leader didn't comment on Blue King's coldness, acting as if he was used to it. Perhaps he had initially felt some affection for the Pokémon, but after being promoted to team leader and abandoning its original Pokémon, for the first time, any such affection for the Pokémon disappeared. His only concern was how to use the Pokémon to advance his position. Chapter 403, Emperor Blue. The team leader's face remained expressionless, his mind preoccupied with capturing the unknown Pokémon and his own future. He feared that if he failed to complete the mission assigned by the organization, not only would his dreams of promotion be shattered, but he would also face endless fear. The team leader shuddered at the thought, his eyes tinged with fear and anxiety. "Blue King, go look for it too. Use scent detection. If you haven't found it, don't come back." The team leader's order was brutally cold, practically devoid of any human touch. But on reflection, it was understandable. After all, his only option now was a desperate attempt. How could he care less about the Pokémon's feelings? Perhaps accustomed to it, or perhaps simply no longer concerned with his trainer, Blue King simply nodded indifferently at his master's command. Immediately, Blue Huan activated his scent detection skill. With a twitch of his nose, Blue King joined the search for unknown Pokémon. After all, while Blue King was a fairy-type Pokémon, it technically had some dog-like habits. Therefore, the team leader felt quite relieved to send Blue King out to join the search. After all, his Blue King possessed nearly power. It seemed Blue King held a high position among the group. Wherever it went, everyone avoided it, both the other members and Pokémon alike. It wasn't exactly a bossy display, but it simply meant that Blue King was the strongest among the Pokémon. Otherwise, the others wouldn't have been impressed. Blue, while not possessing the usual cute and beautiful appearance of the delicate Blue King had a rather ferocious appearance. Just the sight of its massive, heavy canine teeth was enough to send a chill down one's spine. But at this moment, Blue King ignored the group and Pokémon around him, completely absorbed in his work, as if the surroundings had no bearing on him at all. A more experienced Pokémon doctor, or a Pokémon investigator like Watery or Kona, would have clearly recognized that Blue King had been trained to be a machine, a completely obedient machine, devoid of any emotion, simply following orders. Seeing Blue King's behavior, the group and Pokémon didn't dare to disturb him, instead continuing their search. But it was better to return it. As expected of the strongest Pokémon possessed by the team leader, it lived up to the expectations of everyone and its trainer. In a matter of moments, they had already found the unknown Pokémon. The movement on this side quickly attracted the attention of the members who were paying close attention. Exclamations erupted again, and the clatter of footsteps echoed through the darkness. "Hurry, hurry, he's hiding over there. Everyone, hurry up and follow him. Don't let him get away." "Great, we finally found him. Hurry up. If you lose him again, I'll make sure you get a taste of your own medicine before you're completely doomed." The team leader, no longer concerned, threatened. It seemed the threat had worked, and perhaps the promise of benefits, but this time the surrounding members became even more frantic. Their fur glowed blood red as they watched the petite figure swaying in the darkness ahead, as if they were seeing golden coins and a dazzling power. They rushed forward impatiently, some even surpassing the speed of the Pokémon, leading the charge. Naughty, this sudden change of events immediately threw the Pokémon off guard. It couldn't understand why it had been hiding so well, and even to further hide itself, it had shaken them off mid-flight. However, the Pokémon clearly knew this wasn't the time to dwell on such matters. Like a frightened deer, it immediately unleashed its legs once again, using its short legs to the fullest, galloping away, intent on shaking them off once more. Whether it was coincidence or a prediction, the result was exactly as it had predicted. The unknown Pokémon ran in the exact direction where you and the other Pokémon were ambushing. Don't let him get away, damn it, we must capture him alive. Golbat, use Air Slash. Larger Hound, use Rush. Blue King, you too, use Headbutt. At this moment, both humans and Pokémon displayed their extraordinary abilities. A myriad of skills were unleashed, and each Pokémon launched a disparate charge. But at this moment, the unknown Pokémon seemed to have fully awakened its third eye, relying on its keen perception and petite form. Dodging one pounce after another and seemingly powerful attacks, naughty. Although this unknown Pokémon was incredibly fast and agile, it faced the overwhelming attacks and the surrounding attacks. Initially, it was fine, but later on, it began to lose its stamina, narrowly missing the Pokémon's attacks several times. Even so, it had several wounds and lost its initial agility, stumbling a bit. However, thanks to its familiarity with the forest and the surrounding trees acting as a buffer, the Pokémon didn't get caught up by the others for a while, but it seemed only a matter of time. So hurry up, the other one won't be able to get far with his injuries. Promotions and raises are just around the corner. Golbat can't fall behind. Don't let that guy get ahead of you. Wolfhound, inspired once again by the atmosphere, the crowd, as if on steroids, sped up even faster. Among them, Blue King, the most powerful Pokémon, rushed the fastest, followed by Golbat and Growler, two competing Pokémon. Blue Yan watched as the distance between himself and the opponent's figure was getting closer and closer, and Blue King always let out an excited roar. Chapter 404 Incident. Great, that's it. Blue King, charge. Seeing their target dwindle closer and closer, the team leader finally couldn't help but let out a cry of excitement. It seemed as if just this shout would allow Blue King to successfully capture the unknown Pokémon. And it seemed to be just that. With the team leader's shout, Blue King unexpectedly accelerated, pushing his canine form to its limit. Just as Blue King's two massive fangs were about to make contact with the unknown Pokémon, Blue King suddenly felt as if it had struck something, and his entire body stumbled. His initial forward momentum was completely thwarted. Naughty, the figure running ahead, upon hearing the movement behind them, simply glanced back before breaking free again. In the blink of an eye, the petite figure vanished into the darkness, completely gone. Watching his prey so easily vanish, Blue King felt furious. Although he'd been trained to be something like a tool or a weapon, even clay still has a temper. After being repeatedly teased, Blue King's rage was building up, ready to erupt at any moment. And just at that moment, having tripped, Blue King scrambled to his feet. Having experienced that strange moment, he dared not act rashly. He could only watch helplessly as his prey gradually vanished from view, unable to do anything. After the unknown Pokémon completely vanished, Blue King gazed around warily, the sudden scene truly frightening him. He'd been chasing it so well, seemingly just one step away from complete success, only to be repelled by an invisible barrier, leaving him in a state of dismay. Who is it? Who the hell is this? Who the hell is ruining my plans? Get out here. The group of Pokémon and humans following Blue King also witnessed this. The team leader was furious. He had been just one step away from promotion and wealth, yet everything was shattered in an instant. Just moments earlier, he had been beaming with pride, only to have such a sudden change occur. It was truly a roller coaster ride, a whirlwind of thought, a sudden change from heaven to hell. This sudden change frightened everyone around him. Although they all knew someone was behind this, the atmosphere seemed so eerie and strange. A gentle breeze rustled through the leaves, and the atmosphere in the wave field felt oppressive. Every Pokémon and every member of the team was on edge, watching their surroundings warily, fearing the next unexpected event. Could this be another mischievous ghost-type Pokémon? I don't know, it feels more like it was human-caused, as if to bolster their confidence. Everyone speculated, discussing their own theories, trying to find an answer that would fill their own void. What are you all doing here? Let's go and find the guy who's ruining our plans. Seeing his team members gathered in a self-sufficient circle, the team leader felt a surge of inexplicable anger. But we don't know what they are. Would it be a bit rash to disperse so decisively? Seeing the fearful expressions of the members around him, Kun Xiu had no choice but to answer his leader. Haha, are you an idiot? With so many of us, what are you afraid of? Are you useless? We can be crushed by a human wave. The team leader was now lashing out with curses, his anger threatening to explode. Damn it, since you can't catch that Pokemon, then ask me who's behind this. If you don't let me have a good time, then neither will you. The team leader thought viciously, his face becoming ferocious and terrifying. Even in the dark, the light from the torches still caught the attention of the surrounding members. Trembling inwardly, the members, though reluctant, were forced to go ahead because their superiors could overpower them. In a large organization like the S organization, the hierarchy is extremely strict, with respect for superiors and inferiors ingrained in almost everyone. Furthermore, the punishments for those who dared to disobey their superiors were brutal. Despite their fears, the scattered light from each member gathered together, instantly illuminating the area like daylight, making everything clearly visible. Each member carried a Pokemon, serving both as bodyguards and as a protective shield in the event of a disaster. After all, in the eyes of members of this organization, Pokemon were no longer living beings, no longer good friends who coexisted peacefully with humans. Instead, they were dispensable tools. While there were a few who still held affection for their Pokemon and didn't view them as tools, they were a minority. Some believed their current situation wouldn't last long. After all, close proximity breeds corruption. Without a firm foundation of affection, they would undoubtedly be assimilated by the S organization sooner or later. However, Yu couldn't control these matters. While he loved Pokemon, just like humans, Pokemon had their own good and evil sides. After using the trap he'd set up to trick Blue, Yu once again hid himself. Shrouded in darkness, he leaned against the branches of a large tree, observing the members of the S organization and their Pokemon. He planned to take advantage of their scattered presence to capture them. After all, while Pikachu and Charmeleon were formidable, two hands couldn't defeat four. Therefore, upon seeing this old friend from the S organization, Yu hesitated, rescuing the pursued Pokemon before taking any further action. After all, everything was still uncertain. In the new month, please subscribe, collect and vote for me. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 405 Ambush. Bah. Damn it. You said such nice things, but you didn't come out to look for them yourself, only sending us out to search. You're not just using us as cannon fodder, are you? Bah, damn it, that's truly despicable. Big Wolfhound, search thoroughly, don't miss a single spot. Even though we didn't catch that Pokemon, catching this troublemaker behind the scenes is a credit. Combined with the merits I've accumulated over the years, I should be able to get a promotion. On one side of the forest, following orders from the previous leader of the S organization, a few close members remained, while others had already been dispatched to search for the troublemaker. Village Osamu is one of those sent out, cursing profusely and waving his torch wildly. Sparks flew through the air, briefly brightening the small patch of sky. The large wolfhound followed him obediently, acting as his bodyguard and security. Its piercing eyes, its occasional twitching nose, and its tense frame showed it was ready to attack at any moment. Damn it, this is truly despicable. It makes me feel a bit irritated just thinking about it. They're treating us like cannon fodder, the village repairman muttered. If he hadn't considered the lack of light, he would have thrown his torch in anger. It wasn't surprising that the village repairman was so furious. Anyone facing an unknown enemy wouldn't have the same thoughts as him, and that would have been foolish. Besides, in his own opinion, his large wolfhound was quite capable, it simply lacked opportunity. Their team leader had simply been promoted to team leader before being replaced by a nearly quasi-king level blue king on the wall of the organization. Thinking of this, Kun Xiu often felt a sense of resentment. Perhaps because he was still a member of the lowest rank, his wolfhound was his first Pokemon. Therefore, due to a certain mentality, he sometimes felt a disdain for the wolfhound. After all, while the S organization had a strict hierarchy, it was also a predatory organization. As long as one had the ability, not only could one get promoted, but becoming a team leader, a captain, a team leader, or even the head of a project was not impossible. Although Kun Xiu had previously been very powerful within the team, as if everyone had to give him face, that was actually just pretense. Putting aside the hierarchy, if his wolfhound and blue king went head-to-head, he would definitely lose. Big Wolf, as if aware of his master's current mood and unstable emotions, the wolfhound kept a vigilant eye on the surroundings, barking softly at Kun Xiu as if to comfort him. But at this moment, Kun Xiu, filled with anger, had no mood to pay attention to the wolfhound. The barking seemed a bit annoying. "Alright, stop yelling. Go find someone," Kun Xiu said, waving his hand impatiently. Unbeknownst to him, 3 pairs of eyes were watching his every move in the darkness. He looks like a newbie. When he'd been eavesdropping, the sounds from both sides seemed quite lively, so he'd thought it was some expert. Unexpectedly, it turned out to be just a small fry. Yu thought with disappointment. Although he was currently carrying out a special operation, Yu's nature remained unchanged. His battle-crazed instincts urged him to find a few good opponents. But this time, he was truly disappointed. The strongest member of the group was the leader. And the nearly quasi-king level blue king in his lap was just enough. Forget it. This really disappoints me. These little roadside monsters aren't even enough for us to level up. Charmeleon, you'll take on the charger this time. Yu, hiding in the shadows, ordered the Charmeleon, who was hiding not far from him. Then, as if afraid he didn't understand, he explained, "I'll leave the big wolfhound to you. Leave it to me. Pikachu, you'll continue to stand guard." Pikachu. Though the Pokémon couldn't be seen clearly in the darkness, their excitement could be heard from their subdued cries. That's it. Then, with another word, the small patch of darkness fell silent once again. The big wolfhound will use scent detection to see if it can find anyone. Village Xiu's eyes scanned the surroundings. Perhaps it was the passage of time, or perhaps it was the silence around him, but although Village Xiu had been vigilant, he had relaxed compared to his initial state. As the saying goes, when people relax, their thoughts wander. And that was exactly what Village Xiu found himself in. Rubbing his shriveled stomach with both hands, Kun Xiu stared blankly ahead. "Oh. Damn it. Just catching that one Pokémon has kept me from eating. I'm starving." Big Wolf, the large wolfhound, barked beside him, perhaps out of hunger, perhaps to appease its master. "Oh, really? You've got it pretty hard then." "That's right. Those damn capitalists, they only know how to exploit us, the lowest of the low." "Hey, brother," hearing someone sympathize with him, Kun Xiu instinctively echoed his words, a familiar, yet unassuming comment. Just as Kun Xiu heard a voice and instinctively responded, 2 figures suddenly appeared behind them. It was only in that moment that Kun Xiu regained his composure. Faced with these sudden words, he regained his composure after his initial panic. After all, though he was only a member of the lowest rank, he still had a strong mental fortitude. "Who are you? How did you get here?" Subconsciously, Kun Xiu asked the usual question anyone would ask upon seeing this scene. However, he quickly recovered and gave the order, "Big Wolfhound, use rush." Yu was a bit surprised by the opponent's quick reaction, but he wasn't panicked at all. He seemed quite interested. "Not bad, your reflexes are decent. I'll play with you for a night." "Charmeleon, you split." Suddenly, a flash of fire lit up in the darkness, and a figure darted out even faster, followed by a flash of white splitting chain. Chapter 406, Another Incident. This guy is too weak. I thought he'd be a formidable opponent with his quick reflexes, but he's just a piece of shit. Yu looked at the unconscious village Osamu on the ground and shook his head in disappointment. But Yu wasn't the only one to feel this way. Charmeleon's expression was the exact same as his trainer's. He stared in bewilderment at the now-defunct wolfhound, completely incapacitated. Was he too strong, or was he just too weak? While he had a small element of sneak attack, it shouldn't have been enough to kill him in one blow. And it was just one move, a simple splitting technique. How could he not even be able to withstand a single blow? This was truly boring. He'd gone to great lengths to conceal his flaming tail, just to avoid detection. And to be rewarded with this, it was truly a loss. Wasn't it? Lisa, if I'd known this earlier, I might as well have switched with Pikachu. He'd do the fighting, and I'd just stand guard. Charmeleon muttered unhappily, looking at the wolfhound's corpse. If the wolfhound hadn't been completely incapacitated, and if it hadn't had the habit of whipping corpses, it would have wanted to kick the wolfhound a few more times to vent its anger. But as Charmeleon was muttering, a sudden flash of inspiration struck him. No wonder, that's why. I finally figured it out. I thought it was weird before. So that's why. Pikachu has such a bad conscience. No wonder he didn't fight with me when the master wanted to take me. He even happily accepted the sentry duty the master assigned him. It turns out he'd already known the other party wasn't very strong. He's a real veteran. The more he thought about it, the angrier he grew, his fury barely contained. With each breath Charmeleon took, plumes of white smoke emanated from its nostrils, and wisps of flame emanated from its mouth. Forget it, forget it. Charmeleon, hide them somewhere, and we'll hunt the others. Let's see if we can find a decent opponent, otherwise we'll be in for a boring night. Yu hurriedly called Charmeleon to clean up the mess on the battlefield. Lizzie Charmeleon, who had been sighing at the side, suddenly lit up upon hearing Yu's words. Fighting spirit returned to his heart, and the flames of his tail intensified. That's right. Judging by the number of Pokémon in that group just now, there must have been quite a few. It's impossible for every Pokémon to be as weak as this one. After hastily dragging the village repairman and the wolfhound into a patch of grass for cover, Yu led Charmeleon into the darkness, searching for their next prey. For the next few minutes, similar scenes played out in every corner of the darkened forest. As each S organization member and Pokémon on guard was dispatched by Yu and Charmeleon, their hearts grew increasingly disappointed. The glimmer of hope, fading over and over again, was shattered. They'd been promised the next one would be stronger, hadn't they? But all they'd been fighting were a bunch of weaklings, hadn't they? So much so that after Charmeleon and Pikachu reunited, Pikachu constantly gloated over their misfortune, even pretending to be prescient in front of Charmeleon. Although Yu had dispatched many of the S organization members he had dispatched to search the surrounding areas, many remained. After all, without alerting the others, Yu had to carefully dispatch them one by one, fearing unnecessary trouble. Therefore, despite fighting for nearly half an hour, Yu had only eliminated a third of the S organization's men and Pokémon. However, this one-third of the people and Pokémon could be considered the eyes of the entire team. After all, the members sent out to gather information had been eliminated. However, Yu and his two Pokémon's unstoppable success didn't last long, as something unexpected happened. Coincidentally, the person Yu and Charmeleon encountered was the trainer of Golbat, another active figure in the search team who had been out on a village repair mission. The story goes like this: after once again dispatching a group of S organization members and Pokémon, Yu, accompanied by Charmeleon and Pikachu, set out to hunt his next target. This target happened to be Golbat's trainer, Golbat. Upon discovering Golbat and his trainer, Yu didn't immediately send Charmeleon into action, but cautiously observed. After all, while he might be belligerent, he wasn't foolish. While this might be fine in a casual sparring match, when it came to a life-or-death battle, he became incredibly cautious, always considering everything before acting. Because, in his opinion, if it were a battle between the 5 paths, he wouldn't be afraid alone. But if it was a Pokémon battle, then they had to consider their own Pokémon. With this in mind, Yu observed for a while before finally deciding to hunt the prey in front of him. Just like the previous times, but perhaps because the previous encounters had left him extremely disappointed, this time he planned to kill it in an instant. So, although it was an ambush, Yu slowly emerged from the darkness under the shocked gaze of Golbat, the trainer, and Golbat. This time he brought Charmeleon with him, and Pikachu was left behind to keep watch. Unlike the initial cursing Yu displayed when he encountered village repair, the Golbat trainer was extremely cautious, appearing to be extremely vigilant. Not only him, but even the Pokémon were deeply influenced by their master, staring vigilantly around, and he would occasionally release his ability Ultrasonic Wave to explore. If Yu hadn't relied on his almighty inner strength to conduct reconnaissance and exploration, Amateur might have really capsized in the ditch and been discovered immediately. But how to say it? Perhaps because of complete disappointment, Yu's initial sense of concealment was in vain, which led to the following scene. Chapter 407 Seeking Help. Damn it. Will I ever meet a decent opponent? I'm not going to waste this whole night in bed, precious training time, Yu screamed inwardly, his battle frenzy clearly recurring. Tormented by this repeated mental state, Yu decided to stop pretending and show off his best self. Hence, after his initial shock and panic, Golbat's trainer, Golbat, was now stunned. Golbat, in particular, was particularly impressive. Despite the darkness, the firelight still revealed a mouth so large it could practically fit a Pokémon egg, not to mention Yu's exceptional vision. But Yu's situation proved to be truly catastrophic. Faced with the sudden appearance of Yu and Charmeleon, Golbat's trainer, after an initial flurry of panic, remained silent. There was none of the questioning or fear one might expect from a stranger or an unknown enemy. For a moment, the two of them stared at each other. Yu and Charmeleon couldn't help but frown at each other's gradually fading expressions. Charmeleon, in particular, instinctively rubbed his face. What the hell? Why wasn't he intimidated by my aura? And shouldn't I be terrifying? Otherwise, why would that little buzzbit always run away when he saw me? But hey, what's going on? Their expressions were so calm, as if they were staring at nothing. Give me some respect, will you? At least hold on to that terrified expression for a little longer. Otherwise, where would I, the future strongest fire Pokémon, save for my dignity? However, no matter how Charmeleon roared inwardly, neither Golbat nor its trainer reacted. Yu couldn't help but frown at this. Was he kidding me? What was going on? He wasn't frightened, was he? But he didn't look like he was. Forget it. I guess this guy's not on the right place. Such bad luck, to be in this situation. Charmeleon, let's not get involved with this patient. Let's get this over with. Yu pinched his brow, his head aching. Zha Charmeleon yelled, clearly agreeing with his master's words. Looking at the still motionless man in pet across from them, Charmeleon, though disappointed, still raised his glowing white claws. As Charmeleon approached, the Golbat trainer seemed to only just realize what was happening, his body shuddering. Faced with this precarious situation, the Golbat trainer didn't immediately order Golbat to resist. Instead, he quickly pulled out something resembling a firecracker from his body. Then, as Yu stared in astonishment in Charmeleon's unheard gaze, he pulled out a specially prepared flare from their organization. And, watching the reversal unfold, as the flare went off, Golbat's trainer's pretentious chant rang out. One arrow pierces the clouds, and 1,000 troops descend upon us. Yu's initial reaction was a startling start, followed by a frantic mental cry, this is doom. This is going to be a disaster. The other party's chant was so powerful, it inevitably made Yu's imagination run wild. Were they sending out another expert? The other party's chant was so full of energy, it couldn't possibly be a signal flare just to attract the members of their so-called group. Therefore, Yu completely ignored that thought, assuming it was some kind of distress signal, similar to his Dragon Fury order. That would be a disaster. Although he was happy to encounter a strong opponent, given his battle-crazed nature, he was in such a hurry this time, and since he didn't think it was a big deal, he only brought Pichu and Charmeleon. While both Pokemon were powerful enough to rank in the top 5 of his team, that wasn't enough. 2 fists can't beat 4 hands. A random punch could kill the Master, and then they'd be doomed if they came to attack. Because the sudden change had happened so quickly, by the time Yu realized what was happening, it was too late to intervene. Therefore, out of caution, Yu decisively ordered, Charmer, make a quick decision, use flamethrower, HMPH. I won't let you succeed. My main force is coming soon. If I can hold you back, you'll be finished. Although he was just a lowly minion in the S organization, at this moment, Golbat's training was filled with boundless pride. A wild, unbridled laugh echoed through the dark forest. Oh, your strength isn't that great, but you're still so arrogant. Yu now realized that the opponent's Golbat was barely at the elite level. A creature of this caliber, let alone Pikachu, would likely be instantly defeated by Charmeleon. Unlike humans, Charmeleon, as a Pokemon, could sense Golbat's emotions, influenced by its trainer. This very emotion was a provocation to Charmeleon. Consequently, a roar, even more powerful than before, echoed through the forest. Perhaps desperate, Charmeleon didn't even worry about attracting too many enemies with its roar. Charmeleon's only concern was to completely pound Golbat into a Zubat-like, fat rat. Haha, how dare you underestimate my Golbat? Golbat's trainer, seeing this, wasn't angry at all. Instead, he looked pleased, with a hint of sarcasm on his face. Huh? What do you mean? Are you playing the pig to eat the tiger? Yu hesitated at this. But this time, it only lasted a moment, as Yu immediately broke it. Fear was a joke to Yu, with the exception of his senior sister and Xiaozuner. Perhaps it was the moment he became a warrior that made him charge forward, fearless of any difficulty, daring to fight it all. Chapter 408 Opponent. I want to see if you're just stalling for time, or if you're really playing dumb. Perhaps it was this fearless mentality, This willingness to take on anything and everything, that gave Yu the hesitant look he needed. Instead, a hint of excitement filled his face. Go Charmeleon. Then use Flamethrower. I want to see what kind of foes we're up against today. Seeing Yu's sudden change in demeanor, Golbat's trainer's heart skipped a beat. Despite his earlier aggressive and boastful demeanor, he knew his own limitations. While he didn't know the opponent's strength, his words had given him pause. This seemingly delicate young man before him was a formidable opponent. But expecting him to resign himself to his fate was impossible. So, Golbat's trainer and Golbat began to resist. Golbat, use Air Slash. Oh, you want to have a Pokemon battle with me? Interesting. Yu showed no sign of impending danger. Instead, he crossed his arms and watched the ensuing battle with great interest. The small space suddenly lit up, and Charmeleon blasted a thick column of fire from its mouth, hurtling straight towards Golbat. Gulp facing the incoming jet of flame, Golbat showed no fear. Instead, he let out a loud cry and flapped his wings 3 times. Visible wind blades shot directly towards the jet of flame, as if to cut it into pieces. At first, just as Golbat and its trainer had imagined, Charmeleon, sweeping in with all his might, faced the air slash formed by the wind blades. The pillar of fire was shattered, its fragments fragmented. Without the support of its own fire, the scattered jets of flame quickly dissipated into the air. Only the faintest traces of heat, the scattered sparks of fire, proved that the space had been burned by flames. Oh. I didn't realize he was quite capable. Yu's eyes lit up. He wasn't surprised by his opponent's strength, but rather by the fact that Golbat could withstand Charmeleon's jets of fire. Charmeleon also looked extremely excited, the flames on its tail growing even more intense. Clearly surprised that the opponent could withstand his jets of fire, even though the jets he had just unleashed were only about 6 out of 10 of his original power. But Golbat was still quite formidable, given the level difference. Furthermore, while Yu and Charmeleon had previously employed surprise tactics, catching the investigating organization members off guard, they hadn't made such a high-profile appearance like this time. But this was enough to excite Charmeleon. After all, he'd fought all night and hadn't encountered a single enemy he'd considered impressive. Everywhere he went, he'd been instantly defeated. Now, there was one that could withstand Charmeleon's attack. How could he not be excited? Perhaps if he could withstand it this time, he could also withstand it the next time. Would that mean he'd have a fighting chance tonight? And as a Pokemon, you should be content. Charmeleon, who had initially held out hope, wasn't discouraged by Golbat's defeat. Instead, he felt hopeful. Honestly, Charmeleon had a strong ability to manage himself. Watching Golbat flap its wings, a foe he'd normally have instantly defeated, Charmeleon consoled himself, it's okay, it's okay. While the opponent wasn't particularly strong, he was still a fighting force among the weaklings. At least he could warm himself up. Otherwise, we'd have come out all night for nothing. Instead of bullying the weaklings, I should have known better than to leave. At least if I stayed in camp, I could have sparred with that massive beast, Gyarados. Okay, that was just self-consolation at first. The latter part was simply Charmeleon's grumbling, having endured it until this point. Haha, finally. Someone strong enough to show off? Then Charmeleon, don't hold back. Fight with all your might. Yu's battle-crazed nature erupted completely. Okay, to be honest, despite Yu's current excitement, he was just like Charmeleon, venting his frustrations inwardly. After all, the word battle-crazed wasn't just a casual remark. Whether it was a sparring match or a Pokemon battle, the very beginning of the fight would almost always get Yu fired up, assuming, of course, the opponent was strong enough and qualified. Charmeleon roared, his eyes fixed on Golbat, a fierce look in his eyes. Incineroar's stare sent a chill down Golbat's spine. Its once wide mouth gradually closed to ease its fear. Charmer, hurry up, don't be reluctant. There's another group coming soon, and there might even be a stronger Pokemon there. Seeing that Charmer was hesitant to attack, Yu immediately saw through his thoughts and offered solace. As expected of Charmer's trainer, he truly understood Charmer's personality and psychology. At that moment, Charmer felt just as Yu had described, somewhat reluctant to attack Golbat. It was truly a struggle. Finally finding a decent opponent, no, the opponent had overestimated it, more like a punching bag. After destroying it with a single blow, Charmer still felt a bit reluctant. In previous sparring matches with Yu's other Pokemon, perhaps because Charmer had grown accustomed to it, It hadn't noticed the difficulty of encountering a decent opponent. But now he felt it completely. After all, although opponents were difficult to find before, at least Yu would arrange their battles. So although the battles they faced would not be easy to win, this time they were facing small-time experienced babies, so it was really not difficult. But when he heard Yu say that there might be stronger opponents next time, Charmeleon was completely excited, not caring whether his trainer was lying or comforting him. After all, having hope is better than letting Charmeleon continue in that self-consoling state. Therefore, after receiving Yu's dose of stimulant, Charmeleon completely exploded. Chapter 409 Waiting. Rizal like a ignited flame, a thin line of fire shot out from Charmeleon's mouth. Even hotter than the previous probing attempt, it swept straight towards Golbat. HMPH. A brat is a brat. Even though we're using the same trick, it won't work on my Golbat. Perhaps it was a lack of observation, or perhaps it was due to Golbat's trainer's inherently low level, but Golbat's trainer was completely clueless. However, whether due to carelessness or sheer inattention, he didn't notice that Golbat, a body larger than Pikachu's, was trembling slightly in the face of the flames. Golbat, let's show them our strength. Use Air Slash. As if to prove himself to Yu, Golbat's trainer gave the same order as before. Although he was terrified by the power of Charmeleon's flames, Golbat had no choice but to bite the bullet, driven by his master's orders. As if to demonstrate his dedication, Golbat flapped his wings vigorously, creating a series of air slashes. Then, without hesitation, he unleashed the condensed air slashes, slashing towards the jet of flame. Seeing this, despite the darkness, the smug look on Golbat's face was full of confidence. It seemed as if Charmeleon's jet of flame would be chopped into pieces by the air slashes, just as before. But the idea was beautiful, the reality was harsh. Far from severing the jet of flame, the air slashes were instantly dispersed by the powerful blow. The jet of flame then gathered momentum, as if it hadn't consumed any energy from the previous air slashes. The jet of flame continued to strike Golbat with undiminished force. Facing the undiminished blow of the jet of flame, Golbat tried to dodge, but it was too late. Although Golbat was frightened, perhaps the previous air slash gave it confidence. Although it knew it was no match for its opponent, it still believed its own skills could block the jet of fire, just as it had the last time. This resulted in its body failing to keep up with its thoughts. Therefore, despite its desperate attempts to dodge the jet of fire, it was still completely powerless and hit with a 100% chance of success. While not as powerful as the effective group, the jet of fire itself was incredibly powerful. Furthermore, Charmeleon's constant practice and occasional blasts of fire had further refined its technique, allowing it to unleash its full power at 100-200%. As a black shadow descended, Yu swiftly shut out. Before Golbat's trainer could react, he completely lost consciousness and collapsed to the ground. With his fall, Golbat, completely incapacitated, crashed onto the soft ground. Sigh. I thought it would be at least a gold-level opponent, but I didn't expect it to be just a bronze. Retracting his hand from Golbat's neck, Yu sighed for the umpteenth time tonight. Riza this time, it wasn't just Yu, even Charmeleon was like this. Clearly victorious, yet with a limp demeanor. Charmeleon's head drooped, it looked at Yu with a pitiful expression. Seeing this, Yu turned his head away, as if he hadn't noticed. Alright, stop looking so disgusted. Clean up the battlefield quickly. This is just a snack, the feast is coming soon. Hearing the word feast, Charmeleon regained some of his spirits, forcing himself to work harder and began to clean up the battlefield. From Yu's initial appearance to the end of the battle, what seemed like an eternity had only lasted 2 or 3 minutes. Just as Charmeleon was cleaning up the battlefield, a yellow forest emerged from the darkness. Yu and Charmeleon were completely unprepared. The yellow figure, having emerged, swiftly climbed onto Charmeleon's body. Pikachu, Pikachu, how was it? Did you have a good time fighting tonight? It was Pikachu, now perched on Charmeleon's shoulder, a look of gloating delight on his face. Lisa, great fun, very much. And get off me now. Master ordered us to clean up the battlefield, I need to finish quickly. Charmeleon kept clamoring impatiently as he dragged Golbat, his trainer's corpse, clearly feeling his skin on its shoulder was hindering its work. Pikachu knew his priorities. Though still mumbling, he obediently jumped off Charmeleon's body. While waiting for Charmeleon to clean up the battlefield, Yu also waited for reinforcements to arrive. He figured that if the remaining members were as strong as the previous ones, it would be better to gather them all together and take them down in one fell swoop, rather than defeating them one by one. The enemy's efficiency is so slow. Why haven't they arrived yet? Yu muttered, seemingly impatient. Unbeknownst to Yu, perhaps coincidentally, among the organization members dispatched to scout the situation, Golbat's trainer and his pet were the farthest from the central force. Therefore, this was why, despite the distress signal being sent out so long ago, the enemy still hadn't arrived. Practice makes perfect. Charmeleon cleaned up the battlefield with incredible speed, erasing every trace in a flash. While Yu saw a few minor imperfections, darkness was the perfect camouflage for anything, so these minor flaws were nothing to worry about. After Charmeleon had completely cleared the battlefield, Yu prepared to leave with Pikachu and Charmeleon. After all, he'd waited so long. And yet, not even a trace of the enemy had been seen. Rather than wasting time, he might as well move on to the next target. We've been waiting for so long, but they still haven't come. Don't say that I don't give them face, Yu muttered in a low voice, and waved his hand to indicate that he would take Pikachu and Charmeleon away from here to look for the next prey. Chapter 410 Bargaining. Hey, Charmeleon, let's go. Yu, carrying Pikachu on his shoulder, stopped after only a few steps. He noticed Charmeleon hadn't followed him, and instead seemed reluctant to leave. Seeing this, Yu immediately understood what he was thinking. While speechless, he didn't want Charmeleon to get upset over it. So he continued, okay, don't be disappointed. Let's put it this way. Don't call me unkind. We'll wait another 10 seconds. If there's still no sign of anyone, then we'll go and find our next target. Okay, Lisa. Charmeleon looked up at his master and let out a low cry. His eyes cleared of his grievance, feeling that he was being tricked by his master. But due to his master's power, he couldn't do anything. Ignoring Charmeleon's pitiful gaze, Yu stared into the darkness ahead, counting down to himself. 10, 9, 8, 7. Yu's voice echoed through the darkness, but even as he counted down, his ears still trembled slightly. Honestly, he felt a little bit of resentment, though not as much as Charmeleon. But that didn't mean he wasn't eager. As the countdown dwindled, the disappointment on Charmeleon's face deepened. Seeing this again, Yu's lips curved up, and he muttered to himself, in a voice Charmeleon couldn't hear, it's finally here. Tonight's feast, I hope it doesn't disappoint me. Charmeleon, of course, didn't hear Yu's soft muttering. When Yu mercifully called down the number to 0, Charmeleon moved forward without even needing his urging. Its languid appearance, however, amused Yu. Apparently finding the living dinosaur quite amusing, Yu made no move to warn it, simply following Charmeleon with a smile on his face. Before he could even take a few steps with Charmeleon, a noise behind them stopped them in their tracks. Charmeleon, in particular, had previously looked dejected and lifeless, but now suddenly raised his head and chest, his eyes ablaze. Turning to watch the approaching movement from behind, his eyes held no fear or negative emotion, only brimming anticipation. Is it finally here? Yu asked, an enigmatic smile on his face. Simultaneously, Pikachu rose from Yu's shoulder. Although no one was visible, the pink electric sacs on either side of its cheeks, flickering with arcs of electricity, clearly signaled its entry into combat mode. That's where the flare went off just now. Hurry, there's a figure up ahead. Don't let them get away, go and catch him. Listening to the approaching noise, Yu, Pikachu, and Charmeleon, the two pets, made no move to flee. They had tacitly decided to confront the enemy head-on. Hurry, surround them. Don't let them get away. The group of pursuers drew closer, and Yu finally got a clearer look at their formation. The leader was clearly one of the most prestigious and high-ranking among them. Backed by his subordinates, the team leader quickly blocked Yu's path, as if fearing he might escape. Furthermore, he waved his hand, commanding his men to surround Yu and his two pets. Remarkably, each member of the encircling group was accompanied by a Pokémon. From a visual perspective, the number of people Yu had surrounded was no less than 10. In other words, if each person had one Pokémon, then Yu and his two pets would be surrounded by at least 10 Pokémon. Hey, it must be you who interrupted our fun earlier, the team leader said in a stern tone, his eyes glaring at Yu. As if to brighten the atmosphere, or perhaps to embolden his own team, the other members' Pokémon, in perfect harmony, began to bark. Their fierce cries threatened to erupt in a fight at the slightest disagreement. To qualify as a Pokémon for an evil organization like the S organization, the selection criteria for their chosen Pokémon are quite strict. Those chosen Pokémon, besides being powerful, also had to possess a ferocious, intimidating appearance. For example, wolves, Arbor, Gyarados, these were all iconic Pokémon used by villains. Yu ignored the team leader's harsh tone. Not only him, but even Pikachu and the other two Pokémon seemed oblivious to the noise. None of them had the mindset of being trapped prey. Instead, they acted more like hunters. Both Charmeleon and Pikachu gazed at the numerous Pokémon with intense interest, like hunters selecting the prey, their eyes gleaming with excitement. Electric arcs danced around Pikachu, while the flames on Charmeleon's tail burned even more fiercely. Simultaneously, the two creatures' whispered discussions could be heard. Because their voices were so quiet, only Yu, who was closer, could hear them. Of course, Yu couldn't understand Pokémon language. Pika Pika Pika, there are 11 of them. That should be enough for us, right, Lizha Tisk? Only 11. That's not enough for me. I want 10 of them, Charmeleon snorted disdainfully, completely disregarding their numbers. Pikachu, look, there's a Kintaro flying in the sky, why am I so unconvinced? Pikachu started to argue again. Obviously he couldn't stand Charmeleon's arrogant look. Lizha, how about this, since there are 11 of them? How about I take 6 and you take 5? Pikachu, not so good, who are you looking down on, you? You can beat 10 by yourself, so why can't I? Lizha, how about this? That blue lord obviously looks a little stronger, so I'll give it to you, you take 4 and I take 7. The two Pokémon started to bargain with each other as if no one was around, completely unaware of the strange looks their owners gave them. Chapter 411 Combined Attack. Despite being surrounded, Yu acted completely unconcerned, his entire attention focused on his two Pokémon. From the moment they were surrounded until now, Pikachu and Charmeleon had been discussing something behind his back. Judging by their whispers, it was clear they had no good intentions. At that moment, Yu suddenly felt a surge of longing. If only he could understand Pokémon language. Then he could. You're going too far. You're going too far. Who are you looking down on? We're surrounding you, and you dare to ignore us. Seeing Yu's lack of response, the team leader erupted in rage. If he hadn't retained a modicum of common sense, he'd have immediately declared a mass brawl among the Pokémon. What are you talking about? At this moment, Yu, as if just coming to his senses, looked at the furious team leader with a bewildered expression. Haha, brat, I advise you to get out of here right now. How dare you hinder our S organization? I think you're tired of living, aren't you? The team leader seemed reserved, his eyes fixed on Yu. If it weren't for the aura Yu had exuded earlier, given the character of the S organization, they would have been ready to fight at the slightest disagreement. Facing this rare threat from the team leader, Yu scratched his ear nonchalantly, his expression unconcerned. Haha, is the S organization that powerful? And I just hindered your plans, so what? Are you going to bite me? Let me remind you, it's not like I haven't fought Fushimi-Tsukasa and Kanglang before. Yu wore a haughty smile, his words somewhat ambiguous. Although he had fought against these two so-called 8 major captains of the S organization, he hadn't gained any advantage, and had even been at a disadvantage. However, this was something he felt was a bit humiliating, so how could he possibly reveal it? And in this situation, shouldn't he show off his power to intimidate the other party? As expected, it was just as Yu had imagined. When Yu clearly revealed the names of Kanglang and Fushimi-Tsukasa, the S organization members were once again in an uproar. The team leader, in particular, felt a jolt of fear. Seeing the other party's calm demeanor, he even began to think about backing out. Fushimi-Tsukasa and Kanglang were both important figures in their organization. Meeting them was rare, and now this young brat was actually saying he'd battle those two. How could he not be terrified? You actually know our two captains, the team leader, still a little perplexed, kept asking, hoping for a definitive answer from Yu. Haha, what's the big deal about freedom? Yu said nonchalantly, genuinely amused, intending to use Fushimi-Tsukasa and Kanglang's names to scare them. But before Yu could finish his words, 2 figures, one yellow and one red, dashed out at full speed. Hey, Pikachu, Charmeleon, what are you doing? Although you haven't had a good fight in a while, you shouldn't be so hungry. Your master hasn't even given the order yet, and you're already rushing out." Yu was stunned, and then he couldn't help but shout. Yes, the two figures that rushed out were Pikachu and Charmeleon. It turned out that although these two guys were whispering and chatting and distributing the big cake, their attention was occasionally on Yu and the others. Seeing that Yu had only chatted with the other party for a few words, the other party actually looked scared. Charmeleon and Pikachu immediately felt that something was wrong. After all, if this trend continued, the other party would be scared by Yu's words, and they would have to fight, and wouldn't their plan be ruined? Fearing their master had tricked them again, Charmeleon and Pikachu decided to go all out. By then, the matter was settled, and their master wouldn't be able to stop them no matter how hard he tried. Despite Yu's expression of displeasure, he wasn't unhappy at all. Instead, he felt a certain joy. Damn, these two have learned their lesson. They've learned to act first and ask for permission later. The suddenness of the incident left even Yu unaware, let alone the others and their Pokémon. Without any orders or guidance from their trainer, Pikachu and Charmeleon swiftly rushed towards their respective targets. Pikachu's first target wasn't the powerful Blue King, but rather the weaker Pokémon. After all, Pikachu believed that it was essential to have a good meal beforehand. A little appetizer would be a good start. So, Pikachu used Lightning Flash, charging straight at a Panther. Caught off guard by the sudden flash of lightning, Panther was completely defeated, instantly losing its combat capability. This flash of lightning was a near-instant kill. The same thing was happening on the other side. Just like Pikachu, Charmeleon quickly approached an arbor and, before it could react, lashed it out with a single blow of its dragon tail, completely rendering it incapable of combat. Of course, Charmeleon's record was also instantaneous, leaving the opponent powerless to resist. However, Pikachu and Charmeleon could only defeat their opponent swiftly due to this sudden surprise. By then, the other Pokémon and trainers were already on guard, making such an easy kill impossible. While Pikachu and Charmeleon could have quickly defeated their opponent in a head-on confrontation, it would have taken more effort. Their situation wasn't looking good at this point. After reacting, the remaining members of the organization immediately began issuing orders to their Pokémon. Their tactics are incredibly simple. A combined attack. As the saying goes, 2 fists are no match for 4 hands. Even a swarm of ants can take out an elephant. While the Pokémon of these lowest-ranking members aren't particularly high level, they're no match for their sheer numbers. Even Pikachu and Charmeleon, who are already significantly higher in level, must be treated with caution. Especially in this situation, with the 2 Pokémon charging to the left and right, both sides are surrounded by a circle of human Pokémon from Organization S, unable to support each other. May the deceased rest in peace, may the living strive for success, and may our motherland prosper. Come on, China, come on, world. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 412 Facing the Besieged Fire Dinosaur. Although Charmeleon and Pikachu had previously discussed the strategic allocation of combined attacks, the actual situation presented a completely different problem, one completely different from what they had envisioned. After Pikachu and Charmeleon each swiftly dispatched one of the initial 11, 9 remained. Pikachu, as previously assigned, directly faced Blue Lord, arguably the strongest Pokémon among them. 2 other Pokémon also coordinated Blue Lord's attack, providing a distraction and harassment. Charmeleon, of course, faced the combined attacks of the remaining 6 Pokémon. However, neither Charmeleon nor Pikachu showed any signs of panic despite facing an attack that outnumbered them by many times their number. It was Pikachu who had to expend some effort against the higher-level Blue Lord. And what about Charmeleon? Did you see that boy roaring and yelling with excitement, blasting flames like they were free, shooting several shots into the air to vent his excitement? Meanwhile, despite the sheer number of Pokémon in Organization S, the imposing aura emanating from Charmeleon deterred the surrounding Pokémon from making any rash moves. They all assumed combat stances, baring their teeth, hoping to gain some confidence from Charmeleon. Scanning the surrounding Pokémon one by one, Charmeleon unleashed another jet of flame toward the sky before also moving. As it rapidly approached the 2 Pokémon before it, a white glow emanated from each of its arms. Having previously experienced a surprise attack, The Pokémon were now on high alert. Seeing Charmeleon launch the first attack, they followed suit, suppressing their previous fears. After all, to become a member of an organization, Pokémon, besides their trainers, must possess a strong mental fortitude. Facing the onslaught of attacks, Charmeleon's pace remained steady, even quickening. To Charmeleon's left and right stood two Rushkins. After lingering for a moment, they unleashed a combined lightning flash, intent on attacking Charmeleon from both sides. Simultaneously, the two Pokémon behind Charmeleon also launched their attacks. The combined attacks of the remaining four Pokémon instantly blocked Charmeleon's escape routes. Yet, faced with this desperate situation, Charmeleon showed no trace of worry. Instead, excitement intensified. The flame patterns on its body glowed faintly red in the darkness. While Charmeleon's movements were swift, Rushkin, after using Lightning Flash, a speed-boosting skill, was even faster. Before Charmeleon could even make contact with the two Pokémon in front, the two Rushkins were already charging in from both sides. Rushkin truly lived up to its name. The two charging bears were like spears piercing Charmeleon's heart, their target precisely aimed at Charmeleon's abdomen. Perhaps due to its long association with Yu, the warrior trainer, even Charmeleon had learned to be vigilant. Though its steps continued to charge forward, Charmeleon was now subtly alert to its surroundings. Seeing the strong winds blowing from both sides, Charmeleon's pace remained steady. Furthermore, instead of slowing down, it actually accelerated. The two Pokémon in front of Charmeleon, upon witnessing this, their eyes flashed with excitement. They howled and charged straight at Charmeleon, intending to close the circle and completely trap Charmeleon within it. Faced with a precarious, gradually closing circle, Charmeleon's independent combat and adaptability were truly remarkable. The two Pokémon that had been charging towards Charmeleon were about to approach when a thick, scorching column of fire erupted from Charmeleon's mouth, sweeping back and forth. The immense force of the jet forced the two Pokémon to halt their charge. The sheer force of the jet was simply too overwhelming. Even without direct contact, the searing heat forced the two Pokémon to stop. Although the two Pokémon in front were forced back by the jet, the attacks of the other Pokémon continued unabated. Determined to sandwich Charmeleon, the two Spurs arrived just as Charmeleon was using its jet of fire to repel them. Just as Charmeleon was about to collide, two flashes of white light appeared. Charmeleon used its arms to split open, instantly blocking the Spurs' attack. It appeared effortless. While fending off the two slashing bears, Charmeleon's arms occasionally thrust forward. After probing the bears for a point, Charmeleon unleashed a powerful slash while simultaneously lashing out with all its might, snatching the two slashing bears and dispatching them. The two slashing bears were formidable. Despite Charmeleon's full-strength slashes, they didn't immediately lose their fighting ability, merely gasping for breath. Perhaps just one more blow would do the trick. Although Yu desperately wanted to fight, out of humanitarianism, he knew that a Pokémon battle couldn't simply defeat the opposing trainer. Without their trainer's guidance, the Pokémon's already low power would likely decline even further. Charmeleon and Pikachu would then be blaming themselves to death. Well, that was actually the main reason. After all, they had already promised them a good time, and their master couldn't go back on his word. Therefore, despite facing off against over a dozen members of Organization S, Yu remained fearless and didn't take them seriously. Instead, he watched Charmeleon and Pikachu's battles with great interest. Although the Pokémon they were fighting weren't very strong, Yu could at least see how strong his own Pokémon were. Chapter 413 Main Pokémon. When Yu saw Charmeleon's combined maneuvers, his eyes lit up. After Charmeleon's series of maneuvers completely defeated 4 Pokémon, his delight grew. Haha, I didn't realize. Charmeleon has actually learned to hide his weaknesses. Multitasking is truly impressive. Yu couldn't help but chuckle, feeling happy for Charmeleon. After all, multitasking is a remarkable skill. Whether used in a single fight or a group, it's a formidable tactic. However, as the fight continued, Charmeleon's next maneuver completely stunned Yu. He saw the Charmeleons battling on the field. After each of their left and right hands split apart, sending 2 of the charging Ursaji flying, they formed a siege. The 2 Pokémon that had surrounded them also launched their attacks. While the coordination among the 6 Pokémon wasn't considered impressive at the moment, they were still capable of at least a group fight. Taking advantage of Charmeleon's moment of distraction, the 2 Pokémon behind it exemplified the concept of a sneak attack. The two Pokémon carrying out the attack from behind were both mongoose. Just as the two mongoose's sharp claws were about to ensnare Charmeleon, as if it had eyes on the back of its head, moved once again. This time, however, it wasn't its body that moved, but its tail, blazing with flames. The flames, which had seemed poised to extinguish at any moment in the face of the raging storm, now burned fiercely, resembling dragon scales, shimmering with an emerald green light. While the two mongooses moved swiftly, Charmeleon's tail was clearly even faster. A fleeting emerald green afterimage flashed by, and the two mongooses were swiftly sent flying. Charmeleon couldn't help but sneer in disdain, watching the 6 Pokémon that had once been attacking it aggressively, now suffering varying degrees of injury and completely losing their earlier ferocity. But for Charmeleon, while these 6 Pokémon weren't particularly powerful, they were a welcome relief from his boredom. Even at this moment, after the thrilling battle just now, Charmeleon's mindset had shifted slightly. These 6 Pokémon might be a perfect whetstone for him, a tool for sharpening his skills, especially that ability that Yu had just considered multitasking. No, for Yu now, Charmeleon should be called multitasking. A gasp echoed, and Yu was now staring intently at Charmeleon. Though seemingly frail, it now looked incredibly imposing. I didn't see it before. I didn't expect Charmeleon to be such a promising talent. From multitasking to now, a rough tritasking, Yu muttered to himself, his face filled with boundless ecstasy. It wasn't like just now. Charmeleon used flame spray, then split with both hands, and finally, without looking back, unleashed its dragon tail. These moves appear separate, but the time taken to execute them is actually quite similar. If Charmeleon had been more adept at multitasking, it would have been able to break through the siege much sooner. And while the time taken to multitask was similar, there was a noticeable pause at the very end when Charmeleon unleashed its dragon tail. Haha, amazing, truly amazing. It seems Charmeleon has great potential, Yu exclaimed in delight, silently calculating his team's strength. So, for now, the main Pokémon positions are decided upon: Pikachu, Suicune, Charmeleon, and Gyarados. The above 4 Pokémon are a foregone conclusion. As for the remaining 5, Ditto, Snorlax, Kralker, Buzzbit, and Blaziken, well, Yu is truly reckless. Whether facing the siege himself or the 2 Pokémon attacking him, he's even in the mood to contemplate the 6 strongest main Pokémon in his future team. If the members of Organization S present knew of this amateurish thought, I wonder what they would think. They'd probably all be furious, and then, regardless of their opponent's strength, they'd just grab their weapons and start fighting. But right now, Yu was seriously considering his main Pokémon. I heard from Karuna that since the maximum number of Pokémon in a battle is 6, the number of resistance Pokémon should also be 6. Then Pikachu and the others already have 4 spots. For the remaining 2, they'll have to choose between Snorlax and the others. Of course, that doesn't include the Pokémon he'll want to capture later. After all, what kind of Pokémon he'll be able to capture, and what level he can actually achieve, are all unknowns. Therefore, Yu is seriously considering selecting 2 Pokémon from the remaining Pokémon to join his main team. Let me see. The highest remaining Pokémon strength is only at elite level, and the lowest is probably Snorlax, which is at the level of a newly hatched rookie. But Snorlax has great potential. Especially after its evolution, Snorlax is a true killer. So, the little Snorlax can be put in the reserve team. But the little Buzzbit is growing incredibly fast, almost as powerful as its predecessor, Rocket. Therefore, it's possible to choose one of these 2 flying-type Pokémon to supplement the main team. As for the remaining Skarskard and Ditto, that's a real dilemma. Yu rested his chin on his hand, pondering the power dynamics between Ditto and Skarskard with a troubled look on his face. After all, both Ditto and Skarskard are truly unique, with no impressive battle records to show for themselves. While Yu was racking his brains, trying to assemble the strongest main team, he completely ignored Pikachu's battle on the other side. He'd probably be even happier if he'd seen Pikachu's performance. They would even proudly praise it. Haha, you really are worthy of being my original partner and the pillar of the future Pokémon team. After all, Pikachu's performance was really amazing. Chapter 414, Pikachu's Power. Just as Yu was lost in his own thoughts, we moved forward a bit. Turning our attention to the battle between Pikachu and Charmeleon, we saw that unlike Charmeleon's 6 Pokémon siege, which formed a hexagon or circle, The three Pokémon surrounding Pikachu naturally formed a triangle. If you had looked closely, he would have exclaimed, "Holy crap!" The legendary three elements formation, while the three Pokémon siege Pikachu faced wasn't as bizarre as the legendary three elements formation, it could still be seen as a triangle formation. Whether it was a coincidence or some other reason, the three Pokémon's positions formed a corner formation. The secret of the triangle formation lies in the fact that when one corner is attacked or threatened, the other two can simultaneously attack, acting as a diversion. Or, alternatively, one side can attack the other two. In a sense, the triangle formation, with its smaller number of Pokémon, is even more mysterious and extraordinary than the hexagonal formation with its larger population. Like Charmeleon, Pikachu's first move was to attack the Pokémon in front of him, which happened to be Blue Lord. Compared to Charmeleon's speed, Pikachu was infinitely faster. In just a few breaths, Pikachu was already in front of Blue Lord. Its lightning-fast tail had already hardened like steel, its metallic aura gleaming. Clearly, Pikachu had once again unleashed one of its melee abilities, Iron Tail. Don't ask why Pikachu didn't unleash the more devastating and extended range 100,000 volts. Deeply influenced by Yu's warrior habits, his Pokémon now routinely use melee attacks first when battling other Pokémon. But it was quick. Blue Lord barely reacted when Pikachu appeared before it. A flash of metallic cleavage flashed by, sending Blue Lord flying backwards. Following Blue Lord's flight, the Pokémon on either side of Pikachu launched their attacks. Even the already spurred Blue King, at this moment, swiftly rebounded from the ground at a speed countless times faster than normal, charging towards Pikachu, a white glow emanating from its head. This was clearly a headbutt. Faced with Blue King's swift reaction, Pikachu's eyes were filled with solemnity, yet there was no trace of fear. Faced with this truly 360-degree, all-encompassing attack, Pikachu finally stopped advancing. After all, having already spurred Blue King away, it now blocked its path. This meant that Pikachu, who had previously been able to dodge by running, was now practically trapped in a net. Of course, none of the three Pokémon attacking Pikachu could fly. If Pikachu could, perhaps it could escape and launch a counterattack. However, flying is far from simple, and even if it could still be intercepted by the three Pokémon in the moment before taking flight, which would make the situation even more dire. If Yu had snapped out of his reverie and witnessed this scene, he'd likely not be worried, but rather chuckle. If possible, he'd even pretend to say, "Haha, you think you can completely trap Pikachu like this? You're such a narrow-minded person." Then, Yu would raise his left arm, forming a spear-like hand, and pointed horizontally at the organization members surrounding him. "But don't blink, you country bumpkins. We're about to witness a miracle." Of course, all this only happened if Yu focused on the battle with Pikachu. However, Pikachu's subsequent performance was truly remarkable. And it didn't disappoint Yu. It also left the onlookers stunned. Surrounded from three sides, Pikachu's charge had stalled, and he stood still. His expression was stern to the extreme, his bright eyes darting around. Closer and closer, three Pokémon, coming from different directions but aiming for the same goal, were closing in on Pikachu. In the blink of an eye, they could crush the adorable little Pikachu into pulp. Pika, and at that crucial moment, our Pikachu unleashed its full power. Pikachu fell backwards. The iron-hard tail that had once swatted Blue King away was now devoid of its metallic sheen, its tip pushed to the ground. Then, with lightning speed, he shoved his entire body weight toward his tail. Then, facing this near-peer attack from the three Pokémon, Pikachu's tail transformed into a spring, catapulting Pikachu into the dark sky. If Yu had witnessed this, he would have undoubtedly offered a nonchalant compliment. He truly possesses both strength and softness, hard as steel, soft as a spring. It was a perfect tail for home travel and battles with other Pokémon. And then there was nothing more. Pikachu, its tail like a spring, was launched into the air, its figure vanishing into the darkness. Tonight, the moon, shrouded by dark clouds, obscured her breathtaking beauty. Adding to the gloomy sky, the entire world seemed shrouded in darkness. Even if a member of the organization held a magic torch in the forest, the light of a firefly could not compete with the brightness of the full moon. It was completely ineffective. Therefore, the moment Pikachu was launched, the three Pokémon lost sight of it completely, feeling a sense of helplessness and bewilderment. After all, once they lost their target, relying on their colony's fighting instincts, It would be nearly impossible for them to mount a defense in the next moment. Furthermore, due to the combined attack, the three Pokémon gathered together, staring at each other anxiously, unsure of what to do. Even the trainers who witnessed this situation did not react at all. They did not even issue a single order to attack or defend. Chapter 415 Justice from Heaven. The once heated battle suddenly became somewhat quiet after Pikachu vanished. Due to their utterly impaired fighting instincts, coupled with their mutual training and inaction, Blue King and the others, while still able to fight Pikachu, could only maintain a fighting stance. Perhaps it was only then that their trainers finally realized what was happening. Especially the trainers of the three Pokémon surrounding Pikachu, their cries of surprise grew louder and louder, rivaling the power of a woman's high-decibel ultrasonic scream. Where's Pikachu? Why is Pikachu gone? Holy shit. What's going on? Why is Pikachu flying? Wow. Could this be the legendary Pikachu flying to the moon that's been circulating in secret in China? Every trainer, including the team leader, exclaimed in surprise. But after a long while, no one could confirm that they had spoken a single word to command the Pokémon. Their focus was completely on the enemy Pokémon. This Pokémon, in particular, was surprisingly capable of flying. This also revealed a polarized view among both the Pokémon League staff and the forces of these evil organizations. Either they were incredibly powerful, or they were mere cannon fodder. Although Yu wasn't particularly interested in or concerned with these lesser-ranked members, he recalled the previous battle between Fushimi Tsukasa and Kanglang. While it seemed like a draw, neither side was actually using their full strength. Even so, Yu was still being outmatched. Within the Pokémon League, let's not even talk about the internal workings of the Pokémon League, let's just look at the officially recognized gyms in each region. There are strong and weak gyms, and while each has its own distinct rules, some even quite bizarre or unconventional, their strength varies widely. Some were direct descendants of gym trainers, others were rising stars with potential and ability, and there was even a retired gym trainer from one of the four heavenly kings of the league. But none of this was the most important thing. The most important thing was that the atmosphere on the field hadn't abated in the slightest, despite Pikachu's disappearance. Dazzling bolts of lightning streaked across the sky, as if ripping a chasm through the darkness. This sudden change startled everyone present. Not only them, but even Serena and the other two, who had just finished setting up camp in the forest and were chatting, seemed to notice something in the sky. Gazing at the strange scene in the sky, the three girls were startled, then filled with worry that Yu hadn't returned yet. Of course, Yu certainly didn't know that three other girls were also worried about his absence. Because at this moment, he was still immersed in the world of his six main Pokémon. What's going on? Why is there lightning for no reason? I know, this is the legendary justice from heaven. Hey, who of you has done something wrong? Stand up and admit it quickly, otherwise we might get struck by lightning later. Ahem, Captain, your words are a bit wrong. You know, we are the world's #1 evil organization. Even though we are just the lowest level, we have done a lot of evil things, so what you mean is, if we have to die, we all die together. The team leader was so angry. I don't know what's going on lately, why are there always some ignorant guys? They always jump out and sing the opposite tune. At this point, a more rational and astute member stood out. Ignoring their leader's increasingly dark face, he bluntly stated, Team leader, that wasn't some kind of divinely wrathful lightning. It was more like Pikachu's 100,000 volt ability. What? It seemed as if this member's reminder had only just begun to catch the attention of the team leader and the other members. Upon hearing Pikachu had unleashed 100,000 volt, their first instinct was to give orders to their Pokémon, each one exclaiming in surprise without regard for their order. Only then did they have time to react and issue commands. Blue King, use Shadow Ball, Dragon, use Sand Splash, Dragon, you use Sand Splash too. It was quicker than it seemed. The 100,000 volt lightning was like the wrath of thunder, a roar and devastation. Bolts of lightning lashed down from the sky, shimmering like snakes of electricity. The air around them seemed unable to withstand the force, crackling with resounding crackles. Facing this threatening blow, neither Blue King nor the two Dragon Kings dared to be careless. Blue King concentrated all his might into Shadow Ball, then hurled it straight into the dark sky. The two Rumblers also worked tirelessly, sending clouds of dust flying all around, completely enveloping the three Pokémon. It was like a small sandstorm, a protective shield. It seemed only this way could it keep the 100,000 volt blast at bay. However, Faced with this resistance, Pikachu could only imitate his master and pretentiously declare, in the face of absolute strength, all things will be forcibly suppressed by that force. This was exactly what was unfolding right now, a powerful blow unleashed by Blue King with all his might, the Shadow Ball. Upon contact with a 100,000 volt blast, it held out only briefly before being completely annihilated by the raging force of the lightning, leaving no trace. And then, despite being blocked by the Shadow Ball, the 100,000 volt blast continued its downward trajectory, gathering momentum. What's the origin of this brat? Why are his Pikachu and Charmeleon so powerful? This strength should at least be enough to rival a squadron leader, right? The team leader thought to himself, his eyes filled with deep fear. After all, as much as the team leader hated to admit it, the facts were staring him in the face, forcing him to begin considering this serious issue. After all, while the outcome of Pikachu's battle hadn't yet been determined, he could at least sense the fury and destructive power of the 100,000 volts still gathering momentum. Chapter 416, 100,000 volts. Boom, boom, boom. The violent force of lightning contained within the 100,000 volt surge was like a blade capable of slicing through anything in the world. Facing the sand shield formed by the two straight bears, the lightning struck like the blade of a merciless judge, without pause or emotion. Instantly, the sand shield was engulfed by the lightning. With a resounding explosion, the shield, unable to withstand the impact for a moment, was instantly annihilated. In just a moment, even the Pokémon previously trapped within the shield were completely exposed. The fear and the raging 100,000 volt surge were infinitely magnified in the eyes of the three Pokémon. Without mercy, the 100,000 volt surge engulfed all three Pokémon. Suddenly, the once quiet battle zone erupted in a blaze of lightning and wailing. In the dark night, bolts of lightning struck, illuminating half the sky. The force of 100,000 volts was too overwhelming. As each bolt struck Blue King's three Pokémon, a violent explosion erupted. Smoke completely obscured the entire area, obscuring the view. This situation cast a veil of mystery over the outcome. Indeed, the members of the organization who were watching the battle were all gripped with anxiety. After all, if their Pokémon were defeated and completely incapacitated, they would be in for a very difficult time. Putting aside the question of what this seemingly formidable young man, surrounded by them, would do to them once their Pokémon were completely incapacitated, they simply couldn't complete their mission to capture Pokémon without their help. After all, as much as they hated to admit it, Pokémon and human life were inextricably linked. This made Pokémon an indispensable part of the world, no matter the circumstances. They were indispensable in daily battles, both major and minor, because of their unique qualities. It could even be said that they had become completely integrated into the human family. Therefore, among the crowd present, only Yu remained completely unconcerned. The others were terrified. This was not only about their futures, but also about their lives. Before the smoke from the 100,000 volt attack had cleared, another yellow figure descended from the sky. Its speed was so swift, it felt like a small meteorite. That figure was none other than the Pikachu that had previously launched itself with its tail and, using distance to create a powerful 10-volt attack, had reached its maximum altitude. After using the momentum to soar, Pikachu unleashed the 100,000 volt attack. However, its altitude had reached its limit, and it plummeted downwards. Despite the brief duration of this attack, the height it soared to was significant. After all, this wasn't the first time Pikachu had used this move. After Yu first discovered Pikachu's potential, he focused on special training for a period of time on Pikachu's tail, which could be hard or soft, steel or spring. To make Pikachu's tail even more explosive when it lifted off the ground, Yu equipped it with special gravity wristbands. During this tail training period, Pikachu was also required to carry a full 2 kilograms of weight. While only 2 kilograms might not seem like much to Gyarados or Charmeleon, it's important to remember that Pikachu's entire body weighs only about 6 kilograms. This weight alone adds 2 kilograms, equivalent to 1/3 of Pikachu's weight. Therefore, the height Pikachu's tail could reach, while not exaggerating, was at least 3 or 4 meters. Once it reached its maximum height, despite its small size, 6 kilograms was still a lot of weight. Accustomed to this leaping attack style, Pikachu's body reacted quickly, though not completely imperfectly, when it reached its limit. Its flexible tail, at the moment of leaping, transformed into a spring, releasing 100,000 volts of energy. Once again, Pikachu's soft, flexible tail was enveloped in a metallic glow, as hard as steel, imbued with a destructive quality. With a light radiating from its iron tail, Pikachu slashed down from the sky, seemingly tearing a hole through the darkness. The hole grew larger and deeper. Even afterward, Pikachu's form was shrouded in smoke, but the lingering light still lingered, dazzling and blinding. But at that moment, those watching were no longer focused on the gleam. Instead, their attention was fully focused on the battlefield. Pikachu's strike was undeniably powerful, evident in the muffled reverberations from the smoke. Perhaps due to the sheer force of the blow, the smoke that had previously enveloped their figures dissipated before Pikachu's iron tail, revealing the entire situation within. As the mist gradually dissipated, gasps echoed, followed by curses and cries of fear. Both the two weaker Pokémon and the stronger Blue King collapsed to the ground, their eyes swirling in circles, clearly unable to fight. Meanwhile, a petite figure towered like a god of war. The smoke gradually dissipated, revealing the entire situation within. The tiny figure of Pikachu was now standing on all fours, stepping on Blue King's body. Then, he slowly stood up, his eyes filled with invincibility as he scanned the surroundings, anticipating any Pokémon to suddenly appear and attack. This was also what you had given him. After all, it was always better to be cautious. Chapter 417 Pikachu's Psychology. At that moment, everyone was completely stunned and absorbed in Pikachu's invincibility. Charmeleon's battle raged on nearby. However, by this point, Charmeleon's group had already reached its end. However, when Pikachu's small eyes took in the scene, they did blink a little. That look was like a hungry wolf looking at a small white rabbit. If you or any of his other Pokémon had witnessed this, they wouldn't have been surprised. They might even have understood Pikachu's meaning from that look. At that moment, Pikachu was simply venting his emotions, completely unimpressed by the battle. Therefore, when Pikachu's eyes took in the Pokémon still capable of fighting, they couldn't move. At the same time, his mind began to stir, and his little mouth muttered non-stop. Pikachu, Charmeleon is such a wimp, they haven't even finished a fight yet. I really want to fight them again. They're so weak, it's not even challenging at all. That's not so bad. Those organization members don't understand Pokémon language. If they did, they'd be vomiting blood and running away in panic. Why do I still feel like I'm at a disadvantage? I only defeated 3, while Charmeleon did 6. Even though there's a character among them who's powerful enough to outmatch 2 or 3 of them, it still feels like I'm at a disadvantage. Even the strongest of the enemies couldn't withstand a single 100,000-volt attack. So, what's the difference between them and those weaker Pokémon? 1 is a second, 2 are a second. It doesn't require any effort, and it's not even challenging at all. But look at this dinosaur now. He's facing 6 weaklings, and he's actually fighting them back and forth with such relish. If I'd known, I wouldn't have used my ultimate, Greek letter Omega. I can't help it, I really can't. This is all my fault, Master. When he's commanding me in battle, he'll often ask me to unleash my ultimate, 100,000 volts. Just to test the opposing Pokémon and see if they're strong or weak. Fine. But this time, things went wrong. Out of habit, Pikachu unleashed his 100,000 volts without reservation. Perhaps it was the excitement, but the power was almost at 120%. So, with this move, Pikachu's heart was bleeding. No fun, no fun. Seeing Charmeleon struggling so hard, I wanted to run over and rub my head against him, practice my skills. Even if I had to assist, that would be fine. Despite this intense thought, Pikachu showed no intention of taking action. After all, no matter how much he and Charmeleon fought, it couldn't hide the fact that they had a good relationship. Besides, honesty and trustworthiness are virtues that Pikachu, as a Pokémon, possesses. Another reason was that the enemy was so weak that you only considered it, but showed no intention of actually taking action to get the kill. Consequently, Pikachu simply watched for a moment before returning to Yu's side with a bored expression. As for the 3 Pokémon, Blue King, having completely lost their combat capabilities, it would take time for them to recover. Because of Pikachu's heroic performance, even now, with their own Pokémon completely disabled, the members of Organization S were hesitant to act rashly and reclaim their Pokémon within their Pokémon collections. While Pokémon were merely tools for these members, possessing a powerful Pokémon meant more than just power, it held a profound level of life. This revealed their deepest fear. After all, In their minds, anyone who could easily defeat all their Pokémon was at least a captain. In other words, that meant someone who has a very powerful gym trainer. Although Charmeleon hadn't finished the fight yet, its relaxed and unconcerned manner made it clear that the enemy was merely teasing their Pokémon. As expected, Charmeleon, who had been enjoying the battle with the 6 Pokémon surrounding him, glanced at Pikachu and noticed that it had finished its fight. He no longer cared to continue. He planned to quickly resolve the battle and reunite with Pikachu and his master. After all, delay would lead to chaos, so he should be more vigilant for the future. This was a gift from his master. He also didn't want Pikachu to catch him in the act. Then, taking advantage of finishing the battle later than Pikachu, he'd start boasting about his superior strength, and so on. This also caused Charmeleon to lose his temper. Perhaps because he'd been playing around, Charmeleon hadn't really struck back. This was why, despite the 6 Pokémon surrounding him panting heavily, none of them had lost their fighting strength. After being once again driven back by Charmeleon, the 6 Pokémon were completely enraged. After all, after such a long siege and yet still unable to capture a single Pokémon, even a clay man would still be a little angry. This was because Charmeleon hadn't shown any aggressive tactics, but had continued to tangle with the 6 Pokémon, occasionally giving them an advantage. That's why the 6 Pokémon still had confidence. However, at this point in the battle, Charmeleon had no intention of remaining and launched a sweeping volley of flames. The 3 Pokémon in the front row were instantly incapacitated by the scorching flames. In a matter of moments, the remaining 3 Pokémon behind them, one by one, unleashed their most powerful abilities, determined to completely defeat Charmeleon. However, those 3 Pokémon were gone just as quickly as they arrived. As they approached, Charmeleon's tail was already activated, lashing out with all its might, leaving none of the 3 Pokémon able to penetrate its body. Chapter 418 Threat. After witnessing the 3 Pokémon in front of it completely lose their fighting ability, completely lying motionless on the ground, Charmeleon finally felt reassured and began to shift its focus. After all, it's better to be prepared than to act prematurely, and caution is the best way to prevent a crisis. It all works the same way. Charmeleon's tail had previously sent the 3 sneak-attacking Pokémon flying, completely demonstrating its multitasking ability. But while it was multitasking, it had its priorities. Charmeleon's focus had been on using its fire jets to dispatch the 3 Pokémon in front. So, facing the sneak attacks from the 3 Pokémon behind, Charmeleon used its tail to repel them, but it only served to hinder them. After being sent flying, the 3 Pokémon Charmeleon climbed back to their feet. After confirming the 3 Pokémon in front were completely incapacitated, Charmeleon performed a dashing turn, unleashing its final fire jet. Charmeleon spun 180 degrees and unleashed a jet of flame. The semicircular stream of flames resembled a blazing blade of flaming energy, as if anything in its path would vanish before it. Facing Charmeleon's powerful jet of flame, the other 3 Pokémon offered no resistance. Each one unleashed their full power, prompted by their trainers, unleashing what they considered their strongest attacks, as if only this could completely ward off the imminent loss of their combat power. Each of the 3 Pokémon unleashed a dazzling display of skills. However, in the face of sheer power, their supposed superiority proved laughable. The sweep of the jet, followed by a barrage of skills, only caused the flames to flicker. Then, a similar situation unfolded before them, as the 3 Blue Lord Pokémon faced 100,000 volts. While the jet of flame wasn't as violent as a 100,000 volt burst, its power, seemingly enough to incinerate everything in the world, still left the 3 Pokémon feeling a sense of powerlessness. They could only watch helplessly as the jet of flame grew larger before their eyes, the scorching heat drawing ever closer to their bodies. Then, accompanied by several screams, the entire world seemed to return to silence, with only the sound of heavy breathing. Defeated, completely defeated. Facing the barely adult boy and his 2 Pokémon, their entire group's Pokémon were completely rendered incapable of fighting. Of course, there were also the members he had sent out to scout the situation and their Pokémon, who had yet to arrive or join them. Even if he was slow to react, the team leader realized that his group of subordinates had likely been secretly dispatched by the boy and his 2 Pokémon ahead. Lisa ignoring the horrified looks around him, Charmeleon returned to Yu's side and reunited with Pikachu. Pikachu, you're really slow. Could it be that you haven't checked in for so long that your strength has dropped again? Or maybe I've just gotten stronger again. Haha, Despite the somewhat dull and tense atmosphere, upon seeing Charmeleon arrive, Pikachu couldn't help but tease his friend, who seemed like a formidable rival, once again. "Lisa, shut up," Charmeleon snorted, showing no sign of intimidation at Pikachu, completely unfazed by its astonishing fighting power. He was in a very bad mood at the moment. Indeed, he was in a very bad mood. As he expected, just as he'd expected, he was only one step behind, and Pikachu was teasing him again. "Hey, is that what's going on? Why is it so quiet?" Yu's puzzled voice rang out, as if he had just come to his senses. Looking around in surprise at the eerie atmosphere, Yu couldn't help but ask, "Hey, Pikachu and Charmeleon, why are you two here? Is the battle over?" Yu was also confused at this moment. After careful consideration, he had already roughly formed a lineup of his 6 main Pokémon. Therefore, after just coming out of his deep thoughts and noticing the strange silence, he asked his question in a daze. After all, he thought, Pikachu and Charmeleon were so belligerent, and they had been holding back all night. Given their personalities, shouldn't they play with a Pokémon and then end the battle after satisfying their desire? But it had only been a few minutes. How could the battle be over the moment he came to his senses? Yu was right, he hadn't been thinking for very long. It could only be said that Pikachu and Charmeleon's opponents were simply too weak. At first, the two guys were genuinely looking for a good fight. Last time, a group of Pokémon couldn't even handle their attacks, and the subtle rivalry between them all contributed to the swift outcome. "Kid, I don't care who you are. You're from Organization S. How dare you interrupt our mission? Aren't you afraid of retaliation?" The team leader's tone was restrained, a hint of cold menace lingering in his voice. Hearing the team leader's threats once again, Yu couldn't help but twitch. Now, even villains resort to verbal threats when they can't defeat them? This is truly cliché. Yu grumbled furiously in his mind, looking at a clown. Of course. The team leader, already somewhat irritated, didn't see Yu's expression, let alone his thoughts. If he knew this so-called kid in front of him viewed their evil organization this way, he wondered what he would think. Despite being a small-time team leader, he had absolutely no tact. Seeing Yu so stunned, he thought his threats had worked. He couldn't help but think complacently, "Humph, he said before that he had fought with Fushimi Tsukasa and Captain Kanglang. I guess he heard the name of our organization from somewhere and is trying to scare us. Now that the name of the organization is directly mentioned, this little brat will be scared to death. Haha, no matter how strong you are, kneel down and submit to my power." Wahahaha. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 419's Organization and Anti-Alliance. What's wrong with this guy in front of me? Is he mentally disturbed or just a fool? That idiotic grin is so disgusting and vulgar. Yu looked at him with a nagging fear. He cursed under his breath as he looked at his team leader, who was now glaring at him with a pig-like smile, as if he were prey. "I'll give you one more chance, kid. Leave here. We can pretend this never happened. Otherwise, you'll face the pursuit of the entire second organization." He didn't know where he got the courage from, but the team leader's tone was sinister. "Haha, interesting, really interesting. Then I'll give you one more chance. Tell me why you want to capture that Pokémon? What's your goal?" Yu ignored the threat, his tone cold and tinged with murderous intent. Gurgle faced with a murderous aura that had almost solidified into tangible form, our team leader couldn't help but swallow. He didn't have the temperament of a little Tongmu at all, and his legs trembled slightly. After all, even within the S organization, there were warriors like Yu, some even stronger than him. But ultimately, the law of the jungle prevails, and these warriors can almost be considered mid to high-level figures. Smaller leaders like the team leader might have heard of warriors, but encounters with them are rare, if not non-existent. This is because the modern era is no longer dominated by warriors. After all, no matter how formidable one's own strength, facing the machinery of the state, one becomes as insignificant as an ant. Another reason is that the methods displayed by warriors are simply too shocking. To prevent panic, various countries have jointly issued a ban on warriors displaying their prowess in public. Of course, there are exceptions. After all, this world isn't just populated by humans, there are also Pokémon. Let's not even talk about the gym leaders of fighting gyms, 9 out of 10 of them are likely warriors. Take, for example, Shiba, Kanto's undisputed fighting king. He can fight unarmed opponents with bare hands. His astonishing fighting prowess is completely exposed to the world. But what can be done about it? They couldn't stand the fact that the other party was one of the 4 heavenly kings of the alliance, not to mention one of the guardians of an entire region. The same logic held true for other officially recognized fighting gyms. Combined with all of the above, this meant that, despite being a minor leader in an evil organization, they could only bully ordinary people. Essentially, they were living in the ordinary world, facing the cruel and bloody underworld of the martial arts world, a completely different world for them. Therefore, the team leader, considered an ordinary person, was utterly terrified by Yu Yu's imposing presence. The fact that he didn't collapse was a testament to his resilience. You clearly want to do something? I'm telling you, don't mess around. Those are all secrets of our organization. Don't pry around, and I won't tell you. The team leader swallowed and stuttered. Despite his deep fear, loyalty to his organization forced him to respond to Yu. Oh. Haha, really? I'm really looking forward to learning more about the organization's secrets. Hearing the team leader's words, Yu Yu's interest in the secrets of the organization intensified. He remembered his sister, Jun Shaling, once telling him that the organization was a world-class organization. Unlike the minor villains operating in a certain island nation, the organization was truly, unadulterated evil. To help Yu better understand the horror of the organization, Jun Shaling even gave him an example. Take Team Rocket, the troublemakers in the Kanto region, or Team Aqua and Team Magma in the Hone region. While they were also evil organizations, at least they were pursuing a specific goal and maintained a minimum of self-determination. But the organization was completely different. They would do anything to achieve their goals. Their members were a bunch of lunatics, a mix of all sorts of people, making their infiltration capabilities truly terrifying. Most importantly, some of their members were even desperate criminals. This clearly showed the Alliance's fear of the organization. However, the most important point was that the organization was also known as the Samsara Organization, which was their internal name for themselves. Normally, members of the Alliance simply claim that the organization violates the Alliance. Of course, many people still don't understand this. They simply treat the organization and the entire Alliance organizations separately, never considering them as a unified whole. Perhaps this serves the purpose of obfuscating the public's view and allowing for more covert operations, or perhaps there's a deeper meaning. But who knows? Of course, only a select few are aware of this. Perhaps even senior officials are unaware, let alone the lowest-ranking members. At least, Yu and the sweat-drenched team leader before him were unaware. Faced with the team leader's renewed threat, Yu remained silent this time, merely snorting with a sinister smile. Pikachu, constantly monitoring Yu's expression, instantly understood when he saw it. After all, they had been partners for a long time. While not a single soulmate, their rapport was at least remarkable. It seems that both Yu and Pikachu instantly understood each other's movements. Therefore, Pikachu, standing on Yu's shoulder, wore a fierce look, the electric arcs on his cheeks flickering and pulsing. The threat on his cute little face was obvious, and he even tried to increase his team's momentum. Pikachu even ordered Charmeleon, leveraging his already menacing features. The aura emanating from these two Pokémon was terrifying, and everyone around him was terrified. They feared they would be struck by lightning or burned by fire at any moment. After all, Pokémon attacking humans is not illegal, it is only humans who maliciously abuse Pokémon that is illegal. Although the laws of the Alliance are irrelevant to these evil organizations, it seems many people are confusing the two organizations. Therefore, Yu decided to merge the two organizations into one, which would look quite exciting. Chapter 420 Research. Facing two Pokémon that held the power over his life and death, and the imp he considered a brat, the team leader's mind was completely blank. His life was on the line, and so was his. Either way, he was doomed. Faced with this dilemma, what was he supposed to do? The wait online was urgent. Finally, under the combined force of Pikachu and Charmeleon's lightning and fire, the team leader's mind seemed to click. He decided to deal with Yu first, then deal with the challenge of not joining the organization. After all, despite his loyalty to the organization, anyone would make the right choice when their life was at stake. Besides, a good death was better than a miserable life. At least there was a difference between dying immediately and later. Having made up his mind, The team leader no longer held back, revealing everything he had learned. I'll tell you. The target of our mission is a Pokemon named Naughty Panda. Naughty Panda, Yu muttered to himself, pulling out his Pokédex to look up Naughty Panda's information. After all, he had been traveling for so long, and he hadn't seen Naughty Panda much before. As he researched, Yu continued, "So, why are you chasing Naughty Panda? What's your plan? Tell me everything straight away." At the same time, Yu signaled Pikachu and Charmeleon with his eyes. The tacit understanding they had developed over that short period of time was instantly apparent. Lightning and fire were flung freely and unceremoniously in front of the team leader. Seeing this, the team leader shuddered, his words stammering, but he still explained the reason for their capture of Naughty Panda. It turned out that Naughty Panda was a Pokemon being studied at a research institute within their organization, but something unexpected had caused Naughty Panda to escape. The Naughty Panda they'd been chasing was the same one that had been experimented on at their research institute. Of course, this research institute wasn't a legitimate, harmless institution like Professor Oak or Professor Blurtano. The title of Pokemon Professor wasn't something anyone could achieve. First and foremost, one had to have made significant contributions to Pokemon research and be recognized by the Pokemon League. Even after becoming a professor, if one didn't achieve further success, while their influence would decline, the resources allocated by the League would also gradually decrease. Therefore, becoming a Pokemon professor was incredibly difficult. Given all of the above, even if one possessed talent, one still needed a recommendation. While becoming a Pokemon professor was certainly difficult, the benefits were substantial. Take Professor Oak's Research Institute, for example. It was entirely funded by the Pokemon League, occupying an entire mountain behind it. That amount of land was so vast that even a wealthy individual wouldn't be able to afford it. It required not only wealth but also connections. After becoming a professor, not only does the Alliance provide housing, but as long as your request isn't excessive, the Alliance will almost always prioritize your needs. In short, there's nothing you can't achieve, only things you can't imagine. Of course, you first need to have the influence and reputation. As far as Yu knows, the only well-known Pokemon professors in the island nation who have reached this level of status are Professor Oak in the Kanto region, Professor Uchiki in the Orange Islands, Professor Sora in the Chengdu region, Professor Adamaki in the Hon region, Professor Yamanashi in the Sinnoh region, Professor Tsubuki in the Unova region, and Professor Blurtano in the Kalos region. These are the more well-known professors. Of course, these professors are the most authoritative representatives of their respective regions. The rest are lesser known, at least through Professor Oak's connections. The few professors Yu knew were all introduced by Professor Oak. The research institute mentioned by team leader Yu is privately owned. Every evil organization has a professor, whose power is only slightly lower than that of senior officials, and sometimes even equal. After all, the research of a doctoral student in an evil organization is confidential, requiring only the leader's trusted confidence. Of course, the research conducted by evil organizations is evil, even illegal and taboo. The horror isn't limited to this. Some evil organizations are committed to activities that violate the supernatural. I won't go into detail here. After all, Yu's current position and circumstances are far from allowing him to encounter such things. However, at this moment, there was indeed some uncertainty. Under the overwhelming pressure of Yu and the two Pokemon, the team leader was trembling with fear, and he blurted out all the details of the mission. So that Naughty Panda escaped from their lab that time. So, what is this organization researching? Or perhaps conducting some kind of experiment? Yu frowned. Subconsciously, upon hearing that Pokemon were being captured for experimentation, his first thought wasn't displeasure, but rather a sense of unease. When evil organizations research Pokemon-related matters, it's usually not a good thing. Because evil organizations often exploit Pokemon for all sorts of evil. Yu often felt a pang of inexplicable discomfort when he thought of the countless innocent Pokemon being captured for cruel experiments or suffering other tragedies. Perhaps they had no connection, but at least they were still alive. Furthermore, those evil organizations were different from research institutes. Researchers would, at most, study the habits of various Pokemon or academic matters like their organizational structure. But if a Pokemon fell into the hands of an evil organization, they would exploit its potential and value to the utmost, until it was worthless, and then ruthlessly discarded. Therefore, upon hearing of the other party's plan, Yu subconsciously wanted to disrupt it. While this might be a drop in the bucket, it would at least save countless Pokémon. Chapter 421 Hesitation. Young man, look, this is everything I know. I've told you everything now. Can we leave then? The team leader asked cautiously, completely losing his earlier arrogance. He feared accidentally offending the man before him again. Then, he would face not only the man's overwhelming aura, but also the intimidating presence of the two young masters. But Yu simply didn't have the time to pay attention to him right now. Or perhaps, he simply didn't have the heart to do so, as he was once again lost in thought. It was a fierce struggle between his inner and outer thoughts. Why was he struggling? That was simple. It revolved around the question of whether or not to disrupt and stop the S organization's plot. Many people might ask, didn't Yu have his mind set on this? He had even resolved, driven by a sense of unease, to fight the evil forces to the bitter end. But that was merely a fleeting, impulsive thought. He didn't deny his determination to fight the evil forces to the bitter end, but there were certain preconditions. And that presupposes ensuring the safety of those around him. He doesn't want his impulsive actions to lead to the tragedies so often depicted in television dramas. If this had happened in the past, when he was venturing into the martial arts world, he would have been alone, unencumbered. He wouldn't hesitate, his sword drawn at the first sign of injustice. But things are different now. While he still has no worries, at least in his heart, he's no longer alone. He now has companions who care about him and who accompany him on his journey. Therefore, while ensuring the safety of his companions, coupled with past experiences, Yu now always thinks twice before acting. After all, the safety of the three women is at stake. He wants to protect them and not put them in any danger. And not just their safety, but also the safety of the many Pokémon he possesses. While the world may appear peaceful and friendly right now, that's simply because people don't see the other side. The Pokémon League's battle against evil forces is often accompanied by numerous casualties and a bloody scene. While both the evil organizations and the Pokémon League are doing their utmost to avoid such a situation, casualties are inevitable. Furthermore, despite their magical powers, Pokémon are often incapacitated after a battle, and simply being sent to Pokémon Center will reappear the next day in pristine condition. However, these only showcase their positive side. Like humans, they experience birth, aging, illness, and death, and some Pokémon even have lifespans shorter than humans. Therefore, the dilemma Yu is currently facing revolves around the seemingly simple yet daunting question of whether to stop or not. Should he stop or not? While this isn't the first time you've faced Organization S head-on, you should. But those times weren't all due to impulsive, uninformed actions. Now that you know the enemy's details, you must think carefully before you act. Only by knowing yourself and the enemy can you achieve victory in every battle. Perhaps Yu hasn't even noticed. If he'd faced this situation at the beginning of his journey with Serena and the other two, he wouldn't have hesitated and would have immediately chosen to stop them. But now, after all this travel? Although it's only been 2 or 3 months, Yu, Xiaoxia and the other two have supported and helped each other throughout. They've long since become close friends. Like family, if not more. This is why Yu has reservations, and it's also because he truly cares about his son and the other two. Little brother, are you still listening? Elsewhere, seeing Yu's lack of movement, the team leader, thinking he was testing him, called out anxiously. This was rare, and perhaps perfectly normal behavior from the team leader's perspective. But it infuriated Yu, who was lost in his own thoughts, pondering a crucial issue. And Yu, so tactlessly, knocked him down. What the hell is going on? Yu waved his hand impatiently, his tone tinged with a hint of hostility. Shut up and be quiet. If anyone dares to yell, I'll teach you a lesson. As Yu's voice rang out, the scene returned to silence once again. This time, even the sound of breathing was suppressed. Someone passing by without knowing the situation might have mistaken those standing there for the legendary zombies. While this side of the forest had become completely silent due to Yu's outburst, a completely different scene unfolded on the other side. Serena and the other two girls, having already packed up their belongings, were gathered around the campfire, chatting and cuddling. Their Pokémon and the others Yu hadn't brought with him were also around. After dinner, the Pokémon were now settling into their usual activities. However, today, perhaps due to Yu's absence and the arrival of Snorlax, some of the less self-aware Pokémon had completely let loose. Why wouldn't you train? He just went straight to playing with the other Pokémon. For example, the still young Buzzbit, the inherently playful Ditto, and the newly hatched Ditto. As for Yu's other Pokemon, they were quite self-disciplined. Gyarados was currently sparring with Suicune, improving each other's strength. After all, their abilities were fairly similar. The remaining Caribbean didn't join the opposing team or join in the fun. Instead, he quietly swam to a spot out of the way of the Gyarados and Suicune fight and began his underwater training. Although Caribbean had been captured by Yu and then transported back to Professor Oak for a period of training, it no longer looked as severely malnourished as it did at first, but it was still slightly smaller than a normal Caribbean. But don't be fooled by its current appearance. The strength of the current giant crab is increasing rapidly, and it is only a short distance away from being a Quasi-King, which means that it has at least reached the peak elite level. Chapter 422, Battle at Xiaoxi. I don't know what's going on with Crab, but ever since Yu recaptured it and then teleported it back to Professor Oak for training, it's been growing at a breakneck pace, like a ninja or high on drugs. While it's not quite as rapid as 1,000 miles a day, it's at least catching up to the veteran member, Rocket. Of course, I don't know if this is due to Professor Oak's training. But this time, at Professor Oak's repeated urging, Yu teleported Rocket, whose strength had already stabilized, back to Professor Oak's research lab. He simply hoped that Rocket, under Professor Oak's careful training and Dago's guidance, would quickly break through its bottleneck and become Yu's next Pokemon to reach the rank of Quasi-King. Of course, this is getting a bit off topic. Let's put that aside for now, as that was all just Yu's fantasy. Whether he could achieve the same level of performance as Crab is still a question. Crab has now been completely transformed, and Yu naturally arranged a new special training plan for her. Wearing Yu's specially crafted wristbands, he exploited the water's resistance to continuously swing the giant crab's massive claws. After all, the giant crab's attacks were quite monotonous. Most attacks relied solely on its claws. A giant crab that hadn't evolved could wield both claws with relative ease. However, this wasn't the case with a giant crab, after the giant crab evolved. After evolution, one claw became enormous. Consequently, it switched from swinging with both arms to swinging with one arm. Yu was taking precautions. He was currently aiming to increase the giant crab's arm strength, giving it even more formidable power. However, the giant crab, now a much improved creature, had ceased to move after swimming out of the reach of the battle between Gyarados and Suicune. Instead, it simply floated on the surface of the stream, its eyes fixed intently on Suicune, or Gyarados. At this moment, a fierce duel was unfolding in the waters not far from the crab. Though it was a duel, the noise was immense. Though it was only a small stream, the entire western direction was now surging with waves as surging as the ocean. Wherever the two Pokemon battled, water splashed everywhere. Especially with their massive bodies, the force could unleash a light rain wherever they passed. Furthermore, as time passed, the dark clouds in the sky gradually began to lift, revealing the moon's delicate beauty. Moonlight poured down across the earth, draping the forest in a veil of soft, subtle beauty. The splashes from the battle between Suicune and Gyarados, one drop after another, cascaded down, illuminating the forest like a shower of diamonds under the moonlight. Even the muffled thuds, while not as dramatic as the thunder in the sky, each collision of flesh and flesh sent the other Pokemon's blood boiling. What's more, it was also Yu's Pokemon, the water-type Gyarados. Right now, Gyarados had no time for his special training. His attention was completely focused on the clash between these two top-tier fighters. Gyarados roared to the sky, unleashing his water cannon straight at Suicune. But how could Suicune, a legendary beast, compare to him? With a similar roar, building up his momentum, he followed up with an icy blue freeze beam. Note that the battle between these two Pokemon was a head-on clash, a style that perfectly embodied Yu's personality. His Pokemon had inherited his personality perfectly. When tactics or techniques weren't needed, they favored a head-on confrontation. Therefore, Suicune's freeze beam wasn't used defensively at all. Its sole goal was to completely destroy the opponent's water cannon, even crushing it. The two water-type Pokemon, considered by Yu to be two of his main Pokemon, were now at full strength, even though this was just a sparring match. However, both Pokemon couldn't help but want to show off in front of their juniors. Did they see the eyes of Buzzbit and Snorlax, watching from the shore, shining and occasionally clapping their hands? Of course, the saying a hero cannot resist a beautiful woman applies not only to humans but also to Pokemon. Perhaps it was fate. The first Pokémon of Serena and the other three women were all fire-type Pokémon. Perhaps because of their female gender, the three Pokémon shared not only the same attributes but also the same female gender. While they might not have had any feelings towards these three female Pokémon, they were probably concerned about the male's gender. Having a rare moment of leisure and entertainment, the two water-type, male Pokémon engaged in a fierce battle in the stream. For weaker water-type Pokémon like Magikarp or Smellifish, the clash between these two was like a battle between giant gods. The atmosphere was tense as Water Cannon and Freeze Beam drew ever closer. While ice could, in a sense, counteract water, freezing it completely, it had little effect against such powerful water-type abilities. Before Freeze Beam could completely freeze Water Cannon, its power unleashed a swift, unbridled force, counteracting the Freeze Beam's power. The combined force of these two mutually reinforcing forces was immense. At the center of Water Cannon and Freeze Beam, the entire stream surface had begun to freeze. Within moments, a thin layer of ice was visible, covering it completely. Finally, with a loud bang, a flood of steam completely moistened the eyes of both Pokémon, and their ferocious attacks ceased. After all, this isn't a true Pokémon battle, just a sparring match. There's no need to go all out or kill your companions. And that loud bang signals the end of this sparring match. Vote for it. Chapter 423, The Crab with Surging Heart. The duel in the stream finally ended with the gasps of two Pokémon, each refusing to give in, as if two tiny flashes of lightning flashed in each other's eyes, heralding the end of this fierce battle. But even though the battle had long since ended, one person remained overcome with a surge of emotion, unable to contain the excitement within. Indeed, the most excited of all was Crab, the one with the most powerful emotions. Though the battle was long over, his eyes still sparkled as he watched Gyarados and Suicune. After all, to him, this battle was truly thrilling and exciting. It could be said that since he was born, he had barely encountered a battle of this magnitude. And now, he already had the potential to become such a powerful being. He believed that following his master, nothing was impossible. From a weak beginning, he had recently become a formidable force. While Griffin's current strength may still be at the elite level, this seemingly unappealing elite level is something it previously couldn't even imagine, or even touch. Perhaps this feeling wouldn't be significant for other Pokémon, but for Griffin, a fellow water-type Pokémon, the emotions were far more profound. After all, why was it that, while both water-type Pokémon were so weak, the other was so powerful? If Griffin had to choose one Pokémon to admire, Suicune or Gyarados, it would undoubtedly be the massive Gyarados. Everyone knows that while Gyarados is incredibly powerful now, before it evolved, when it was still Magikarp, it was known as the weakest Pokémon in the Kanto region. Even a caterpillar could defeat it. Even though Yu's Magikarp was unique, being a shiny Pokémon, it still remained weak. However, if Magikarp lacked talent, it wouldn't be so vulnerable. After all, it's still the golden Magikarp, so its stamina and resilience should be much better than that of a regular Magikarp. After all, it's a rare shiny Pokémon. But that can't make up for Magikarp's weakness. Therefore, in the eyes of other Pokémon, and even those in Yu's control, Gyarados is the quintessential Pokémon protagonist, a prime example of a loser transformed into a genius. Of course, Magikarp isn't the only water Pokémon with such a story and status. Squirtle. This one, among all water Pokémon, is the only one to rival Magikarp's former peculiarities. If Magikarp is the weakest Pokémon, then Squirtle is the ugliest. And yet, these two, considered oddities, transform into one of the most ferocious Pokémon after evolving. The evolved Milotic became the most beautiful Pokémon, and its power and strength were among the best in recent times. Of course, Gyarados' example gave Carbian hope. He saw how it had risen from a weakling, easily bullied by any Pokémon, to power like Gyarados, capable of engaging in heart-wrenching battles with legendary beasts. Carbian, a latecomer, was initially unaware of this, but after evolving into Gyarados, he couldn't resist the boastful nature that came with it. Whenever he had a chance, Gyarados would recount his inspiring story. While it might have been quite intriguing at first, by the end, even Pikachu and the other Pokémon, including Serena and the other two, had grown tired of hearing it. Carbian, however, remained fascinated. After his usual worship of his idol, Carbian finally began his evening training. The giant crab was currently wearing the wristband Yu had specially crafted. and it was precisely because of this that its power increased so rapidly. However, the wristband only worked for Pokémon below the Quasi-King level. Beyond this critical point, further strength gains would require other methods. In other words, for Pokémon like Pikachu who had reached Quasi-King, the wristband would not only offer no training benefits, but could even limit their potential. Now, wearing the wristband its master had given it, the giant crab began to wave its claws relentlessly at the water's surface. Occasionally, a crisp sound echoed, sending up dazzling splashes of water. Naturally, the movement here occasionally caught the attention of Serena and the other two girls. It had been some time since Yuyu's departure, and while Air and the other girls were used to it, they were still anxious. So they had to divert their attention, but there were so few ways to entertain themselves outdoors, so the three girls could only focus on their Pokémon and Yuyu, chatting. That kid, Crab, has grown a lot. Yeah, it really has. I remember when Yuyu first captured it, it was almost the size of a caterpillar. It looked very malnourished. I didn't expect it to have grown so big in just a few days. Haha, speaking of capturing, you guys don't know? Crab was persuaded willingly, and it was all done without Yuyu's knowledge. Xiaoxu couldn't help but giggle as she recalled the scene. Following closely behind, Serena and the other two girls laughed happily. Haha, no way. Think about it. Yuyu's bewildered expression at that moment must have been hilarious. That's right. Yuyu was determined to capture the Pokémon that suited his taste, but out of nowhere, a malnourished Pokémon appeared. Just imagine how furious he must have been. Of course, one of the main characters being discussed at the moment, the giant crab, naturally unaware of the discussion being held by the three women nearby, was now waving its claws for warm-up exercises and was looking for a sparring partner. Chapter 424 Magikarp. Only combat truly tests one's strength. Otherwise, no matter how formidable your own strength may be, it's all empty and not truly your own. Senior Gyarados' words were truly well said. At this moment, Crab, having completed his usual training goals, recalled the phrase Gyarados had stolen from Yuyu and nodded in agreement. Then, his gaze focused intently on finding a goal that would help him improve his strength and gain more combat experience. But Crab was ultimately disappointed. This was just a small stream in the forest. How could any Pokémon possibly meet Crab's discerning taste, nurtured by Yuyu's constant training with Pokémon? Furthermore, the previous battle between the two great gods, Gyarados and Suicune, in the water had driven away many of the already scarce Pokémon in the stream, leaving only one or two generous Magikarp wandering around. Of course, a few playful tadpoles were still lingering where Gyarados and Suicune had been fighting, seemingly searching for something. Through the river's surface, one could see the eyes of a Magikarp darting around, occasionally sizing up the water Pokémon that swam past. But as time wore on, the Magikarp grew impatient, its mind grumbling incessantly. Magnacarp, what's going on? This is just a stream, after all. How come there's not even a single decent water Pokémon? How can I even improve my power? Just then, a Magikarp swam leisurely past a Magikarp. After a brief glance at the large eyes floating above the surface, it transformed and swam away as if nothing had happened. But as it passed, it even gave the Magikarp a provocative shake. The waves lashed the Magikarp's face. The Magikarp, preoccupied with searching for its opponent, had initially ignored the Magikarp before it. Now, it was directly challenging the Magikarp. As the saying goes, you still have a little temper left. Furthermore, the Pokémon in Yuyu's clutches were all incredibly irritable. Even Magikarp, considering itself weak, couldn't stand such a provocation. Without a second thought, it swung its massive claws and smashed down on the Magikarp, unleashing its signature crab punch. But Magikarp, daring to challenge a being so much stronger than itself, was still quite capable. Facing the Magikarp's powerful crab punch, it simply swung its tail and swerved, causing the crab punch to miss and hit the water, sending the Magikarp tumbling out of sight. Seeing its prey, which had dared to challenge it, suddenly vanish, the crab was furious. Without a second thought, it charged forward. There's a saying in the world, when there's no tiger in the water, the monkey is king, and there's a saying in the water, when there's no dragon in the sea, the crab is king. Coupled with the excitement of the previous battle between Gyarados and Suicune, the crab completely immersed itself in the action, as if it had transformed into a being as powerful as Gyarados and Suicune. Raising its shimmering crab fist, it hammered the water like a drum. Suddenly, waves splattered across the surface, and the waves exploded under the impact of the crab fist, like blossoming flowers. But as if this wasn't enough, the crab, tired of swinging its crab fist, simply switched to a barrage of foam beams. It was only a small stream, after all. Under the giant crab's tumultuous activity, a small pond suddenly appeared at its center, akin to a raging sea. Furthermore, the water Pokémon that had previously been active in the surrounding waters fled, like frightened birds. The remaining ones were either the bravest or those whose tempers had become a bit irritable due to the giant crab's annoyance. While most water Pokémon are generally gentle, they couldn't stand the giant crab's torment. One by one, two by three, the water Pokémon emerged from the water in a perfectly rhythmic pattern. If that condition were combined with a sledgehammer, it would have become a classic game of whack-a-mole. In the blink of an eye, the giant crab was completely surrounded by the water Pokémon that lived there. Counting them one by one, they weren't many, only 3 or 4 water-type Pokémon, and surprisingly, not a single Magikarp in sight. But that made sense. Although this was a world where Pokémon and humans coexisted, it was still a world where the strong preyed on the weak, perhaps even more so. As long as you had strength and a powerful fist, you could do almost anything you wanted in this world. But if you lacked that power and were merely a weakling, then the wisest option was to hide yourself and avoid unnecessary trouble. Therefore, Magikarp, often called the punching bag among Pokémon, faced so much bullying, yet chose to endure it instead of decisively attacking. This, in turn, was the Magikarp's cleverness. It wasn't cowardice or lack of courage, but a true way of survival. Otherwise, why would a large group of Magikarp gather at certain times of the year to perform a ritual similar to the Leaping the Dragon Gate? This time, the Leaping the Dragon Gate ritual involved the Magikarp gathering at the lower reaches of the river and then swimming upstream in one swift movement, the most challenging part being crossing a waterfall. After successfully leaping over the Dragon Gate, the Magikarp will fully evolve into the ferocious and powerful Gyarados. This may seem simple, a test that every water Pokémon would be able to handle. However, it truly requires immense perseverance and courage, let alone one with a low base stat like the Magikarp. Consequently, the Magikarp, aware of their own weakness, immediately fled the scene upon realizing the situation was at stake. Only 3 or 4 water Pokémon, self-proclaimed formidable, remained to surround the culprit, the crawler. Chapter 425 Gyarados' Obstruction. The commotion in the stream quickly attracted the attention of the other Pokémon on the shore, as well as Serena and the other 2 girls. Seeing the somewhat malnourished giant crab surrounded by 4 incredibly strong water Pokémon, Serena and the other 2 girls were a little worried. After all, not to mention giant crab's strength. Just the fact that Pichu had so confidently left its Pokémon in their care before leaving, and now giant crab was being bullied by other Pokémon, made the 3 girls feel bad. After all, if it was just based on size, giant crab was the smallest of the group, bar none. And the 4 Pokémon surrounding giant crab were 2 tadpoles and 2 slugs, seemingly from the same tribe, perhaps even relatives. Fortunately, giant crab was no longer the stunted, palm-sized giant crab it once was. Therefore, facing a swarm of mosquito frogs and tadpoles that outnumbered it 4 times and were several times larger than it, the giant crab didn't tremble at all. Otherwise, from a distance, it would have given the illusion of 4 adults besieging a small child. The child, intimidated by their power, cowered in the middle, trembling. Although the giant crab remained calm, it didn't feel that way. But for some reason, Xiaoxu saw the giant crab's current situation as exactly as described above. What should I do? What should I do? The giant crab is being bullied by those tadpoles and frogs. Xiaoxu's pretty face shone with anxiety. Serena and Air were similarly moved. Serena, the more impetuous of the 3, couldn't sit still anymore and threatened to run towards the giant crabs. Air and Xiaoxu followed closely behind, fearing something might happen to the giant crab. But before the 3 women could take a few steps, they froze completely. A massive beast stood before them, blocking their path. Following their confused gaze, they saw Gyarados' massive form lying across the ground, completely blocking the 3 women and their path to the stream. Gyarados, what are you doing? Get out of the way. The crab could be bullied at any moment. Serena was terrified. Seeing the massive beast blocking their path again, she lashed out in anger. Xiaoxu's anxious voice followed, her face etched with worry. Yes, yes. Gyarados, get out of the way. This is no joke. The crab could be heard at any moment. Despite the women's frantic cries and anxious words, Gyarados' massive form remained motionless. Only when meeting the worried, anxious looks in the three women's eyes did Gyarados shake its massive head. The implication was self-evident. It wouldn't budge. When it came to caring for Pokémon, the three women were every bit as devoted as anyone else. Even Xiaoxu, a Pokémon breeder, was even more devoted. Xiaoxu pointed at Gyarados with a trembling finger, tears glistening in her beautiful eyes, her voice trembling slightly. You, how could you be so? Your allies, the three women were generally considered mild-mannered, but Serena, the more impetuous of the three, now had her hands on her waist, her beautiful eyes glaring at Gyarados. Yes. Gyarados, get out of the way. Your allies. It's okay to just stand by and watch, but don't block us from helping. But who knew what this group of Gyarados was? Normally, though he wouldn't be as obedient as he was with his master, Yiyu, he would still listen to the three women's words, if not completely. But now, his refusal to budge made the three women anxious and angry. Yet helpless. If they hadn't known that even if all three of their Pokémon were united, they wouldn't be a match for Gyarados, they would probably have planned to unite and use force to move Gyarados away. Gyarados, I misjudged you. I made you some delicious food earlier. I'll share it with you, poor fleet. Serena puffed her cheeks, her expression bright despite her anger. It was just that now, the crowd was either girls or Pokémon, and no one appreciated it. Gyarados' expression was no longer as resolute as it had been at the beginning. His large, fierce eyes dared not look directly at the three women, and he lowered his head. Serena's words had clearly made him feel a little ashamed. Although a Pokémon, anyone who spent time with you would almost certainly be infected by his personality. His previous belligerence was left aside. A favor must be rewarded, and a grudge must be avenged. This could be considered another aspect of Yu's personality. Therefore, he was deeply influenced by Yu's character of repaying favors and taking revenge. Gyarados felt ashamed and embarrassed. After all, Serena, Xiaoxu, and Air had all been incredibly kind to him. They treated him just like their own Pokémon, no difference at all. And yet, for someone so kind to him, he had hurt her. Not only would heaven, but even a flesh and blood Pokémon would feel guilty. Knowing he was in the wrong, Gyarados lost his usual swagger, his smile a bit awkward, a hint of flattery. Gyarados, you're truly annoying. Seeing Gyarados looking like he'd given up, Serena couldn't help but snort. Pulling Xiaoxu, she prepared to circumvent it, heading in the direction of the giant crab. But before they'd taken a few steps, Serena and the others stopped dead in their tracks. This time, it wasn't Gyarados who was trying to stop them, but Air, who had been completely motionless until then, who had grabbed their wrists, preventing them from moving forward. Air, what are you doing? Serena looked at the owner of the hand holding her wrist, puzzled. Xiaoxu didn't say anything, but her eyes, still glistening with a hint of sparkle, also stared at Air, unblinking. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.